Chapter 201, Coercing He Zhenghao. Under the influence of the formless killing intent, the school of fish around Zhou Qingong suddenly went into a frenzy. Ignoring the pressure emanating from him, they eagerly devoured his body. Without the autonomous protection of his soul, in just a few moments, blood dyed the surrounding seawater red. Zhou Qingong's remains were gone. A stone-like heart with 7 holes in it, glowing with a 7-colored radiance, emerged at the scene. The radiance was extremely dim. With the death of its owner, the 7-aperture exquisite heart lost its nature as a heavenly treasure and became an inconspicuous ordinary stone, sinking to the bottom of the sea. After waiting in place for several days and seeing that the death announcement didn't attract other cultivators, Li Fan returned. He absorbed the 7-aperture exquisite heart to feed truth. Afterward, without alerting anyone, Li Fan quietly returned to 10,000 Immortals Island. Zhou Qingong's disappearance hadn't attracted anyone's attention. For a Foundation establishment cultivator to be out of contact for 10 days was quite normal. Li Fan didn't rush to report Zhou Qingong as a spy. Instead, he first immersed himself in comprehending the 7-aperture exquisite heart. Versatile in all aspects, a heart deep as the sea, beguiling hearts, truth and lie are indistinguishable. 3 days later, Li Fan exhaled deeply, his eyes revealing an inexplicable expression. Although it's just a mid-grade human treasure and has no special benefits for cultivation, as a Foundation treasure for a spy, it's invaluable. In his dantian, truth emitted a gentle radiance, slowly transforming into the appearance of the 7-aperture exquisite heart. Li Fan had the vague feeling that he had put on countless layers of masks, making it difficult for others to easily discern his true thoughts. This treasure is truly wonderful, Li Fan silently praised. Then, Li Fan checked the matching secret technique, the heart-changing technique. This wasn't a cultivation technique but rather a method of disguise created by the organization Zhou Qingong served, specifically for the 7-aperture exquisite heart. After setting a specific appearance in the mind, when the 7-aperture exquisite heart and the technique were mutually stimulated, one could instantly transform into the appearance of another person. Body shape and appearance would all be perfectly imitated. Furthermore, it was a genuine transformation that couldn't be seen through by illusion-piercing methods. The only issue was that it could only change the appearance, one's own aura couldn't be altered. Therefore, every time Zhou Qingong transformed, he was extremely cautious. Only after finding a secluded place without anyone around to conceal his aura would he change his appearance. However, being targeted by Li Fan, who possessed the formless killing intent, made all his caution useless. While studying the heart-changing technique, Li Fan pondered. I've previously thought about using truth to mimic Foundation treasures and impersonate others before. Now, with the 7-aperture exquisite heart and this disguising technique, impersonating others becomes even more realistic. Furthermore, I have Jade Cosmos 1000 Variations Sutra to discern auras and sun-stealing technique to read fate. If I can imitate both aura and fate, I'm afraid it will be truly difficult to tell the real from the fake. If it works, thoughts surged in Li Fan's mind, and many ideas surfaced simultaneously. After the clone takes the 100,000 contribution points from the Cloudwater Heavenly Palace, I will have many things to try. To test the effectiveness of the 7-aperture exquisite heart, Li Fan used a teleportation array to arrive at Luli Island. There was no sign of He Zhenghao anywhere, and Li Fan didn't know where he had gone. Li Fan temporarily didn't bother with him. He just changed into another appearance and spoke nonsense in front of Steward Zhao. Steward Zhao's ability to distinguish between truth and lies had indeed lost its effect, and he was easily fooled. Leaving behind a shocked Steward Zhao, Li Fan, when no one was around, reverted to his original appearance. He sent a message to He Zhenghao, "Fellow Taoist, where are you now?" After a while, He Zhenghao's somewhat tired voice came, "I received a task and am currently constructing defensive formations for a fellow Taoist's island. What does fellow Taoist Li Fan need from me?" Li Fan sneered, "You're still doing tasks. He Zhenghao, do you know that calamity is about to befall you?" He Zhenghao was stunned. Why does fellow Taoist say such things? This matter needs to be discussed in person. Hurry back to Luli Island. The situation is urgent, delays may lead to changes, Li Fan solemnly said. All right, I'll be there soon, fellow Taoist, please wait. Perhaps due to Li Fan's performance during the Spirit Mist Grass incident, He Zhenghao was quite convinced. At this moment, he didn't doubt Li Fan's words. He sounded anxious and directly severed the communication. After half a day, He Zhenghao finally arrived, looking somewhat exhausted and tired, as if he hadn't rested well for a long time. His eyes still had a hint of fear, but it was forcibly suppressed. "Fellow Taoist." He Zhenghao was about to speak when Li Fan waved his hand, indicating him to open the mountain river star formation. He Zhenghao became even more uneasy as he activated the formation. "Fellow Taoist are you familiar with Island Guardian Zhou Qingong?" Li Fan asked. He Zhenghao was stunned for a moment and truthfully answered, "Fellow Taoist Zhou, I'm familiar. We have a good relationship, and he consults me on formation knowledge from time to time." "Why does fellow Taoist ask?" "HMPH. Fortunately, you didn't deceive me just now," Li Fan coldly said. "If you had uttered a false word, I would have turned around and left." He Zhenghao became even more anxious. Seeing that the atmosphere was already ripe, Li Fan didn't heighten the suspense any longer. He took out the recording stone. He played back the conversation between Zhou Qingong and the stone face. This time, He Zhenghao suffered heavy losses. I applied for these 100,000 contribution points to deepen my relationship with him. This person is proficient in formations and has participated in the construction of the Island Guardian formation. With his assistance, we can undoubtedly grasp the formation thoroughly sooner. At first, because Zhou Qingong didn't have his original appearance, He Zhenghao couldn't discern what was happening. However, as the conversation unfolded, He Zhenghao instantly realized what had occurred. And when he heard his name mentioned in the dialogue, his face turned even paler. Sweat beads the size of soybeans rolled down He Zhenghao's forehead, and his entire body couldn't stop trembling. After putting away the memory stone, Li Fan looked at He Zhenghao with a stern expression. "Fellow Taoist how much information about the Island Guardian formation have you leaked?" Not much. Really, not much," He Zhenghao stammered, trying to defend himself. "Stop lying. Do you want me to hand over this recording stone and let the Marshal Hall investigate you?" Li Fan rebuked angrily. He Zhenghao was initially scared, but he then caught the meaning in Li Fan's words. Hope suddenly emerged in his eyes. Grabbing Li Fan's hands, he pleaded, "Fellow Taoist, save me. Please, save me." Li Fan pushed him away. "If you want me to save you, then tell me everything about Zhou Qingong truthfully." With a mournful face, He Zhenghao tearfully spilled the details. After listening, Li Fan was somewhat speechless. It turned out that a significant portion of the outer structural data of the Guardian formation handed over by Zhou Qingong was actually sourced from He Zhenghao. He frequently praised me, boasting about my expertise in formations and seeking advice on formation details. I was a bit flattered by the praise. Who could have thought that as a fellow Kong Yunsi Island Guardian, Zhou Qingong was actually a spy? Why did I let his sweet words cloud my judgment? He Zhenghao wore an expression that seemed on the verge of tears. "No matter if you knew or not, it doesn't change the fact that you leaked confidential information of the 10,000 Immortals Alliance." Li Fan coldly snorted. "Fellow Taoist you should know the consequences, right?" He Zhenghao shivered. "Dismissal and thorough investigation. Deduction of permission levels, and they might even abolish my cultivation." The more he thought about it, the more terrified he became, feeling that his future was becoming bleak. Added to the fact that he had lost his life savings before, and he had been frantically taking on tasks to accumulate contribution points again, leaving him physically and mentally exhausted. Under the multiple blows, He Zhenghao couldn't hold on any longer. His mindset collapsed, and he wailed bitterly. "Why is my life so miserable? I've lost everything, and now, I'm stuck in this situation." Li Fan remained unmoved. After crying for a while, seeing that Li Fan showed no signs of sympathy, He Zhenghao felt somewhat awkward. Wiping away his tears, he said with a tearful voice, "Fellow Taoist, you must save me. You can't hand over this recording stone. Otherwise, my future is ruined for sure." Li Fan asked, "Reporting a spy is a significant accomplishment. Fellow Taoist shouldn't be unaware of that." He Zhenghao mumbled, "I can compensate you." Li Fan chuckled, "Fellow Taoist, you are currently penniless. What compensation can you offer me? I'm not lacking in contribution points. Perhaps you don't know, but I made a profit of 600,000 contribution points during the Spirit Mist Grass incident." He Zhenghao, upon hearing this, widened his eyes, looking at Li Fan with disbelief. "What, don't believe it?" Li Fan asked with a sideways glance. I believe it," He Zhenghao hurriedly nodded. Envy and regret in his eyes grew stronger. "I really regret not listening to fellow Taoist's advice back then." After a while, He Zhenghao thought and said, I have half of the interpretation of the 100 veins formation diagram, my lifelong. Before he could finish, Li Fan interrupted him. I'm not very interested in formations. I only worked as a formation repairer as a stepping stone for entry. He Zhenghao hesitated for a while, then said with difficulty, I have a daughter who is also at the foundation establishment level. I can introduce her to you. Li Fan's expression became solemn as he sternly refused, what do you take me for? Don't mention this matter again. He Zhenghao breathed a sigh of relief but then wore a pensive expression. He seemed to realize that Li Fan did indeed have the intention to spare him. But at the same time, it seemed that Li Fan wanted something from him. However, apart from what he had previously mentioned, He Zhenghao was currently penniless. After pondering for a long time, he couldn't come up with an answer. He Zhenghao couldn't help but smile bitterly, fellow Taoist, please don't toy with me. Just tell me what you want. Li Fan smiled slightly, patted He Zhenghao's shoulder, and said slowly, I want you. He Zhenghao, upon hearing this, first froze, then his face turned pale. Subconsciously, he took a step back, looking at Li Fan warily. He, fellow Taoist, what are you thinking? I am saying that I want you to obey me from now on. Li Fan stood in front of He Zhenghao and spoke slowly. Chapter 202. Selling oneself for 50 years. Hearing Li Fan's words, He Zhenghao was slightly stunned, his face showing a hint of confusion. However, Li Fan didn't give him time to react or think. In an instant, he fully activated the heart-beguiling ability of the 7-aperture exquisite heart, simulated by the truth technique. I, at the age of 29, am in the late foundation establishment stage. What, fellow Taoist, do you think of my talent? Li Fan gazed at He Zhenghao, pressing for an answer. Extraordinary talent, rarely seen in this world, He Zhenghao couldn't help but reply. In the spirit mist grass speculation, I earned a whopping 600,000 contribution points, bankrupting others while getting rich myself. What do you think of my abilities? Li Fan asked again. Seemingly hitting a sore spot, He Zhenghao gave Li Fan a resentful look before reluctantly replying, fellow Taoist has a keen eye and sharp intuition. I am far from comparable. Li Fan continued, within the 10,000 Immortals Alliance, ordinary cultivators are like cattle and horses. Without power or background, it's difficult to stand out. What do you think? He Zhenghao nodded, fellow Taoist's words are correct. Li Fan then patted He Zhenghao's shoulder and spoke with sincerity, it is precisely because of this that you and I should stick together. He Zhenghao felt that Li Fan made some sense, but before he could ponder further, Li Fan asked with concern, you've been a member of the 10,000 Immortals Alliance for quite a few years, haven't you? He Zhenghao thought for a moment, with a nostalgic expression, yes, it's been almost over 100 years. Li Fan, shaking his head repeatedly, said, over 100 years, and you're only at the mid-foundation establishment stage. I've heard you mention before that you have some influence on 10,000 Immortals Island. But, does the network you've painstakingly built really have much effect on your cultivation? I'm afraid it's negligible. He Zhenghao was about to retort, but his mouth opened and closed without producing a single word. Because what Li Fan said was indeed not groundless. That's because the relationships you've cultivated are all useless. If you have value, they will treat you politely. But if one day you lose your cultivation, how will they treat you? Moreover, these relationships are only surface level. If it involves their own interests, Li Fan insinuated. He Zhenghao couldn't help but fall into deep thought. In short, fellow Taoist, you haven't found the right backing, you've associated with the wrong people. But if you follow me, it will be different. I value brotherhood and loyalty. I believe in sharing fortune and facing adversity together. Li Fan spoke eloquently. Take, for example, the nascent soul technique you desire. Li Fan paused, diverting He Zhenghao's attention completely. If you wholeheartedly work under me, I'll lend you 250,000 contribution points. You can exchange it for the technique and cultivate it. How about that? Li Fan stated firmly. He Zhenghao, upon hearing this, seemed as if he had been struck by lightning. His whole body trembled, completely losing his composure. Is what you're saying true? I, Li Fan, always keep my word and never go back on my promises. I heard that the nascent soul technique you fancy is quite compatible with your foundation establishment artifact, right? He Zhenghao nodded repeatedly, yes, that technique is called Mountain and River Hidden Dragon Technique. If I can cultivate this technique, I am certain to achieve the golden core stage within 50 years. Even breaking through to the nascent soul realm is almost guaranteed. After saying that, he looked at Li Fan eagerly, as if wanting to say more but hesitating. 250,000 contribution points. If you, fellow Taoist, were to reaccumulate them, you would have to waste a lot of time, right? If you can redeem the technique early and break through to the golden core realm a few decades earlier, your future achievements will be completely different. The longing in He Zhenghao's eyes grew stronger. If fellow Taoist loans 250,000 contribution points to me, I will definitely consider you my superior in all matters from now on, He Zhenghao finally said after much thought. Li Fan chuckled, took out a golden sheet of paper from his storage ring, and quickly wrote several lines on it with his hand. Later, smiling, Li Fan handed it to He Zhenghao. Words alone are not enough. If fellow Taoist agrees, sign on this commercial contract. This golden commercial contract was exactly the same type that the clone had signed with Zhao Shuyuan before. It was said to be a simplified version of the Five Elders Association's soul contract. Once both parties signed, they would be bound by the contract's power and act spontaneously according to the agreed terms. He Zhenghao carefully read the terms in the contract. Cultivator Li Fan loans 250,000 contribution points to cultivator He Zhenghao at an annual interest rate of 1%. Both parties agree to settle the debt within 50 years. During this period, He Zhenghao will form an alliance with Li Fan as the core. As long as they don't significantly harm his own interests, He Zhenghao will fully accept Li Fan's requests and opinions. Li Fan, based on He Zhenghao's performance each year, should consider reducing interest at his discretion. He Zhenghao frowned slightly but quickly relaxed. In his opinion, the content of this commercial contract was not too harsh. It was even somewhat favorable. After all, 250,000 contribution points were a considerable sum for a foundation establishment cultivator. Who would be willing to lend so many contribution points to a foundation establishment cultivator at such a low interest rate? Moreover, there was a chance to reduce the interest each year. All he needed to do was work for Li Fan. It was just a disguised form of employment. He Zhenghao thought that compared to the soul contract from the Five Elders Association, which required unconditional dedication, this contract was much more generous. After hesitating for a while, he slowly wrote his name on the commercial contract. Seeing this, Li Fan's face lit up. With a stroke of his pen, he signed his own name. With the ink settled, the contract was established. The golden light instantly transformed into 3 parts, one flying into the sky. The other 2 parts entered Li Fan's and He Zhenghao's bodies respectively. From now on, we are on the same side. Li Fan smiled, patting He Zhenghao's shoulder. He Zhenghao also felt that Li Fan became more cordial. Do you have the Tianquan minor mirror? I'll transfer the contribution points to you, Li Fan offered. Yes. He Zhenghao immediately took out the Tianquan minor mirror from his storage ring. After a moment, 250,000 contribution points smoothly entered He Zhenghao's possession. He Zhenghao's face turned red with excitement, eager to exchange for the mountain and river hidden dragon technique. A golden jade slip appeared in his hand. After finally obtaining the nascent soul technique, He Zhenghao couldn't help but feel a surge of emotion. Bowing to Li Fan, He Zhenghao said, "Thank you, fellow Taoist." Li Fan squinted and waved, "We're all on the same side, no need to be polite. Now that you've obtained the technique, why not check its effects? Is it as suitable as you said? I can watch over you," Li Fan suggested. Chapter 203, The Complete Mountain Meditation Technique. He Zhenghao nodded, immediately activating the Tai Sheng Primordial Scripture, and dissolving his cultivation of the mountain meditation technique and instead cultivating the mountain and river hidden dragon technique. When he entered the foundation establishment realm again, Li Fan saw a vast expanse of interconnected mountain ranges and a densely woven network of water systems unfolding above He Zhenghao's head. Amidst the mountains and rivers, a clear and resonant dragon's roar faintly echoed. Clouds and mist churned as if a divine dragon were flying within. It's worthy of being a nascent soul technique, quite magnificent and extraordinary. Li Fan praised in his heart. The anomaly persisted for half a day. Afterward, it slowly dissipated. He Zhenghao opened his eyes, revealing a sharp gaze. He had already restored his cultivation to the mid-foundation establishment stage. How does it feel? Li Fan asked, looking at He Zhenghao, whose demeanor had undergone a significant change. The wonders of this technique surpass my imagination. If the cultivation goes smoothly, I am confident that I can enter the golden core stage within 30 years. He Zhenghao was very pleased and thanked Li Fan again. I've already said, no need to be polite with me. Now, we're in the same boat. Your improvement will only benefit me. Practice diligently and strive to enter the golden core stage soon. Li Fan encouraged. He Zhenghao nodded in agreement. By the way, what do you plan to do with the mountain meditation technique you practiced before? Sell it to the Tianquan mirror? Li Fan casually asked. Yes, it's a golden core cultivation technique, so it should still be worth some contribution points. He Zhenghao replied. How much can you sell it for? Let me check. He Zhenghao took out a jade slip and communicated with the Tianquan mirror. It's only worth 45,000 contribution points. He Zhenghao's face showed disappointment after a moment. Never mind. If it can recover some points, it's enough. He Zhenghao gritted his teeth and was about to sell the mountain meditation technique to the Tianquan mirror. At that moment, Li Fan suddenly spoke up. Wait. He Zhenghao turned to Li Fan and asked, what's the matter, fellow Taoist? Li Fan shook his head. 45,000 contribution points is too much of a loss. I have a way to sell the technique elsewhere. You can, at least get around 50,000 points. He Zhenghao was overjoyed. That's great. I'll trouble fellow Taoist with this matter. Saying this, he handed over the jade slip without any guard. Naturally, part of this was due to their shared commercial contract. However, from He Zhenghao's perspective, Li Fan possessed a substantial amount of contribution points. Even if he borrowed 250,000, there would still be at least 400,000 remaining. With the freedom to choose any nascent soul technique, why would Li Fan covet his mountain meditation technique? Indeed, without even looking at the jade slip, Li Fan directly stashed it into his storage ring. After the matter is settled, I will transfer the contribution points to you. Once you get those contribution points, there's no need to rush to repay your debt to me. It's more important to quickly improve your cultivation with your new technique, Li Fan advised. He Zhenghao showed a grateful expression. Li Fan didn't linger any longer and went straight back to the Tianquan mirror. With no more need to hide it, he took out the jade slip containing the mountain meditation technique and carefully read it. After a long time, he memorized all the contents in the jade slip, then crushed it. As expected, the previously reconstructed mountain meditation technique was incomplete. The reason for going through all this trouble was not only to recruit He Zhenghao, gaining a formation master as an assistant, but also because of the insights gained in the fallen immortal realm. Ancient techniques, such as the Purple Heaven Royal Thunder technique, often had supplementary methods that matched the cultivation method itself, apart from the main cultivation text. The mountain meditation technique, being an ancient cultivation method, should have had such supplementary methods. However, the mountain meditation technique Li Fan had previously reconstructed only contained the cultivation aspect, and was missing any other parts. Coupled with He Zhenghao's earlier mention of the incredible methods of his mountain meditation technique, Li Fan speculated that when he used the method of creating a clone to reproduce the technique, he had lost a portion of it. So, after some twists and turns, he finally obtained the complete version of the mountain meditation technique. And the results did not disappoint Li Fan. In addition to miraculous techniques like earth vein sensing, mountain lifting, and unity of man and mountain, the complete version of the mountain meditation technique had another powerful characteristic that was comparable to meditate and wait for success. It contained the essence of the mountain meditation technique, meditate on the summit. Sitting atop the summit, motionless yet proud. As the mountain peak grows, those meditating atop will simultaneously increase in height. But more importantly, no matter how rapidly the mountain peak grows, no matter how high it rises, it must always be beneath the cultivator practicing the mountain meditation technique. As long as the cultivator does not rise up, the mountain will be perpetually suppressed. This principle could be applied to both mountains and humans. When Li Fan selected a cultivator he had invested in and activated, meditate on the summit, no matter how high the talent of this cultivator was, no matter how many opportunities they encountered, their cultivation realm would never surpass Li Fan's. It was like they were carrying Li Fan on their back, advancing with an extra burden. When this cultivator's realm was the same as Li Fan's, all their cultivation growth would instead increase Li Fan's cultivation. If, for some reason, Li Fan remained stuck at a bottleneck throughout his life, unable to break through, then this cultivator will also be similarly unable to make progress, lingering in place. Extremely malicious. Li Fan could only use these words to describe the meditate on the summit technique of the mountain meditation technique. Li Fan speculated that it was probably due to He Zhenghao's personality of being unwilling to make enemies that he did not practice this technique. This led to the incomplete reproduction of the complete technique during the previous attempt. A technique so powerful yet unreasonable naturally had corresponding restrictions. For example, one could only choose one cultivator at a time to activate, meditate on the summit. The realm of this cultivator must be at least one minor realm lower than oneself to successfully cast the spell. Moreover, there were certain side effects. The longer the effect of meditate on the summit persisted, the more the victim was suppressed, and the stronger the intuition in their hearts would grow. Although they couldn't directly know the specific reason why their cultivation couldn't progress, corresponding changes would spontaneously occur. Initially, there would be an inexplicable aversion to the caster. Then, this aversion would turn into hostility. Finally, it would change from hostility to obsession. An obsession of either you die, or I die. Even with so many restrictions, in Li Fan's view, the suppression effect of the mountain meditation technique was still very powerful. Because the initiative of meditate on the summit always remained in the hands of the caster. One could still suppress for 3 to 5 years. As long as the situation hasn't developed to the point of mortal enemies, one can always switch targets. And for Li Fan, as long as his cultivation grows, he doesn't care about any life and death grudges. A mortal enemy in this life might become a close friend in the next life. Chapter 204. Major matters need resolution. After comprehending the intricacies of the completed mountain meditation technique, for most of the day, Li Fan purchased a blank technique exchange contract from the Tianquan mirror. It was essentially the same as the one Li Fan had signed when selling the Jade Cosmos Thousand Variations Sutra to the Tianquan mirror before. However, since most cultivators had confidentiality requirements for the techniques they practiced, the buyer in this contract could remain anonymous. This kind of agreement costs 500 contribution points per piece. It was much cheaper than the usual 1,000 contribution points for a standard, commercial contract. The format was fixed, requiring only the seller's name, the technique's name, and the selling price to be filled in. Li Fan changed his handwriting and wrote down He Zhenghao, mountain meditation technique, and 55,000 contribution points. Then he sent it to He Zhenghao using the Tianquan mirror. Fellow Taoist He, the matter has been settled. The other party is quite generous, the price is 5,000 points higher than expected. Hurry up and sign the agreement. After a moment, He Zhenghao's delighted voice came, "Thank you, fellow Taoist. I'll sign it right away." Not long after, a golden light tore through space and entered Li Fan's body. From then on, He Zhenghao forgot about the contents of the mountain meditation technique. Li Fan exchanged for 55 high-grade spirit stones and handed them to He Zhenghao. The transaction was thus completed. Li Fan activated the Tai Sheng primordial scripture and dissolved his cultivation. Then, he spent more than half a month familiarizing himself with and mastering the techniques within the mountain meditation technique. After that, Li Fan conducted experiments. Truth transformed into different foundation treasures successively within his dantian. With each transformation, Li Fan cultivated for a period of time. This was to compare the affinity of different heavenly treasures with the mountain meditation technique. The results left Li Fan somewhat disappointed. None of the heavenly treasures he currently mastered were suitable for the mountain meditation technique. The speed of cultivation was similar regardless of the heavenly treasure used. Fortunately, the impact was not significant. Li Fan valued the mountain meditation technique primarily for its investment function. In this life, only He Zhenghao had benefited from Li Fan's favor so far. Li Fan closed his eyes, stopped cultivation, and carefully sensed the changes in his internal cultivation. After a while, Li Fan found the target. A stream of cultivation arose seemingly out of nowhere. Although the quantity was extremely small and couldn't be discerned precisely, it flowed continuously like a clear stream. Li Fan smiled faintly. "It seems fellow Taoist He is progressing well. In the 12th life, when I practiced the mountain meditation technique, I invested in quantity. Although the progress was extremely fast, it attracted pursuit from powerful beings. This time, I need a different strategy. Instead, I must invest in quality. I should invest in the outstanding talents from my memories without restricting them. Just provide free guidance, let them cultivate freely, and allow them to seek their own opportunities. With the fortunes of these outstanding talents, I believe their cultivation speed will far exceed the previous time. Along with monitoring through the formless killing intent, once they comprehend divine methods, I will be able to sense it at any time, observe, and assimilate for my own use. Li Fan's thoughts turned as he silently contemplated. Previously, Li Fan had already conducted experiments. Providing free guidance was equivalent to exchanging contribution points for cultivation, a guaranteed profit. This time, contribution points were relatively abundant, enough to support Xiao Heng, Su Xiaomei, and others to cultivate to the foundation establishment stage. Li Fan thought that when they all reached the late foundation establishment stage, he should be able to break through to the golden core stage. I just need to think of a foolproof plan. After all, things offered for free may make people suspicious. Just as Li Fan was contemplating how to maximize the effectiveness of meditate and wait for success, on 10,000 Immortals Island, the mysterious disappearance of Zhou Qingong finally caught the attention of relevant personnel. The Martial Hall dispatched a team of Golden Core cultivators, led by Elder Gongsun of the Heavenly Secrets Hall, to investigate the matter. Initially, the revelation that Zhou Qingong had been bitten to death by ordinary fish caused a great shock. How could a foundation establishment cultivator be bitten to death by ordinary fish? It must be a conspiracy by the Five Elders Association. A thorough investigation was about to arise. Upon hearing the news, He Zhenghao, anxious and uneasy, asked Li Fan to come to the Luli Island to discuss countermeasures. Li Fan comforted him, telling him not to worry, to behave normally, and to not show any abnormalities. Afterward, he submitted the recording from the recording stone. However, only the part where Zhou Qingong changed his appearance and looked for special stones on the unnamed island was retained. The part where he later dove into the sea and conversed with the stone human face was completely deleted. While submitting the footage, Li Fan also explained that he had accidentally witnessed Zhou Qingong changing his appearance and subsequently acting suspiciously. Having kept a close eye on him, Li Fan secretly followed him and recorded the scenes. As for what happened afterward, it remained unknown because Li Fan had lost track of him. The authenticity of the footage was quickly confirmed. Li Fan also faced an investigation from the Heavenly Secrets Hall. They raised a series of questions about when the footage was recorded, why it was submitted only after Zhou Qingong went missing, and so on. The recording time was about 23 days ago. At that time, I didn't think much, and only felt that this person might have some secrets. Who knew that during my closed-door cultivation, he died? And it was such a ridiculous death, eaten by fish. I knew something was off, so I immediately submitted this footage. Under the effect of the 7-aperture exquisite heart, Li Fan appeared a bit nervous and confessed honestly. The cultivator from the Heavenly Secrets Hall nodded slowly upon hearing this. Afterward, the people in charge of the investigation exchanged some words and let Li Fan leave. Unless there's something important, don't leave the island easily. We may need your cooperation again in the future, the person reminded before leaving. Li Fan nodded repeatedly in agreement. However, the promised second investigation did not come. Several days later, the investigation that had been widely discussed on 10,000 Immortals Island suddenly quieted down. It seemed as if nothing had happened, and Zhou Qingong had never existed. The mysterious and abnormal changes in the situation sparked various discussions among the people. However, everyone knew that this matter was a bit strange, and discussions were kept private. Fellow Taoist Li Fan, what exactly is going on? Wasn't Zhou Qingong a spy? How did he suddenly die? Why did the Alliance suddenly stop investigating? He Zhenghao, who had breathed a sigh of relief from the crisis, was full of doubts. After a moment of contemplation, Li Fan understood the whole story. Smiling, he said, in my opinion, it's probably because they found out that Zhou Qingong was a spy, so the investigation was abruptly terminated. Different branches of the 10,000 Immortals Alliance are highly autonomous. If a spy infiltrated the Kong Yun Sea branch and even became the guardian of an island, it would be a tremendous scandal. To avoid punishment from headquarters and to protect the positions of many people, they naturally need to downplay the situation and sweep it under the rug. Anyway, Zhou Qingong is already dead. Whether he died accidentally or was murdered, it doesn't make much difference. The most important thing is that he's really dead. Once he's dead, it's as if this matter never happened. This way, everyone is happy. As for whether he stole and transmitted any confidential information, it doesn't matter. Would the Five Elders Association still come after this small branch? When He Zhenghao first heard Li Fan's words, he found them unbelievable and absurd. However, after deep thought, he felt that the reality might indeed be like that. So, he remained silent for a long time. Chapter 205, Ancient Battle of Annihilation. As if to confirm Li Fan's predictions, 3 days later, Li Fan received hush money. 10,000 contribution points, plus 3 middle-grade third-level merits. This payment was meant to make Li Fan forget everything related to Zhou Qingong and not mention it to anyone again. Li Fan had no objections and accepted the reward. 10,000 contribution points were not a small sum, and more importantly, his permission level successfully rose to the 10th stage, unlocking new privileges. When searching for information in the Tianshuan mirror, Li Fan could now preview relevant data that would originally require a cultivation realm 1 stage higher. In his case, some secret information only accessible to Golden Core cultivators could now be viewed by Li Fan due to his permission level reaching the 10th stage, even though he was currently at the Foundation Establishment stage. Li Fan conducted a search as usual, looking for a technique that enhanced multitasking abilities. This time, he finally got results. However, upon careful examination of the introduction to the technique called 1 Person, 1,000 Faces, Li Fan frowned with dissatisfaction. The technique, once mastered, could significantly enhance the ability to handle multiple tasks concurrently. However, it came with an unavoidable side effect. Over time, multiple personalities would uncontrollably form within the practitioner, essentially leading to a personality split. Naturally, Li Fan didn't want to cultivate a technique that would turn him into a mental patient, so he had to reluctantly give it up. In fact, regarding techniques for multitasking, Li Fan already had someone in mind to consult. That person was Zhao Shuyuan, who practiced the 10,000 puppets Dao. Zhao Shuyuan's puppets were spread throughout the cultivation world, numbering in the thousands. Each puppet was vividly lifelike, with expressions, movements, and gestures identical to a real person. The first few times Li Fan saw him, he couldn't discern any differences. Controlling so many puppets simultaneously without any lag must involve some special methods. However, it was unclear whether it was due to the unique techniques of the 10,000 puppets Dao, or if there were other methods at play. Li Fan's clone had tried to contact Zhao Shuyuan earlier for inquiries but received no response, possibly because he hadn't yet recovered from the massive loss from Spirit Mist Grass. His 1,000 Miles Hall was still closed to visitors. So, Li Fan had to wait again. With no luck with techniques, Li Fan decided to try out his newly unlocked privileges. Previously, he couldn't search for information on the fallen immortal realm and had to resort to disguises and indirect questioning to understand how to bring items back. Now, it wouldn't be as troublesome. After searching for the fallen immortal realm, countless pieces of information appeared. Li Fan discovered that all this information came from a relatively independent section called Seeking Immortals. In this section, discussions only revolved around matters related to the fallen immortal realm. Any talk related to the real world would be immediately locked and deleted. One could post in this section using their real identity or apply for a fake account to avoid exposure risks. Li Fan didn't register but instead started browsing the relevant information in the Seeking Immortals section. Most of the discussions were about the experiences and encounters in the fallen immortal realm, as well as methods to bring items out. Some cultivators who had successfully brought items from the fallen immortal realm would publish guides. You could access these guides by paying a certain fee and signing a confidentiality contract. Curious, Li Fan searched for information about Ningyuan City. To his surprise, despite the vast ocean of information in Seeking Immortals, not a single piece was related to Ningyuan City. Li Fan then searched for information about the Purple Heaven sect in Zhang Qinmo. Still, no other cultivators had encountered Zhang Qinmo, and people had only encountered the ruins of the Purple Heaven sect. Li Fan browsed through the information, discovering that he and ordinary cultivators were in different time frames within the fallen immortal realm. During the time when Zhang Qinmo and Li Chen went to Ningyuan City to obtain longevity fruits, the new law had just been born and was not yet known to the public. Most cultivators, upon entering the fallen immortal realm, experienced a different time period. The dispute between the new law and the old law had long come to an end. The heavenly rule preventing multiple practitioners of the same cultivation technique had been in place for over 30 years. Order was on the verge of collapse, and a great slaughter was about to unfold. The conflict between the new and old laws will last at least several decades. Afterward, the prosperity of the new law will attract the retaliation of heaven and earth, which will then respond after hundreds of years. Being trapped in a separate area is one thing, but how can the time period differ so much from that of ordinary cultivators? Countless doubts surged in Li Fan's mind. So he started searching for information related to the discrepancy in time points. He found that while such situations were rare, they were not entirely unheard of. There was once a cultivator who appeared in an area of the fallen immortal realm completely devoid of cultivators. This particular region seemed to form its own realm, a unique space shaped by the evolution of human civilization over thousands of years after the extinction of cultivators. This was a possible future time point. Another cultivator was located in a more distant past at the entry point of the fallen immortal realm. It seemed to be during a tremendous and earth-shaking battle. The warring factions were unknown, but the number of participating cultivators was astonishing. According to the cultivator nicknamed Not 2, it was densely packed, like ants, present across the entire space. The radiance of treasures and techniques shined incessantly. At every moment, countless cultivators died. Golden core and nascent soul cultivators could only serve as cannon fodder. Soul transformation, Tao integration, and even longevity immortal experts were engaged in battles, falling one by one. The earth and space were torn apart, and chaotic black lightning struck the battlefield from beyond space, causing cultivators to fall like rain. It was truly a terrifying scene, reminiscent of the end of the world. Because the images described by this cultivator were too bizarre, and only he had ever encountered such a situation, most cultivators believed he was fabricating stories and dismissed his claims. Not 2, however, swore an oath with a curse that if there was any exaggeration, he would die instantly, body and soul. This ruthless oath indeed subdued many skeptics. Nevertheless, a significant number of cultivators remained unconvinced. Apart from these two individuals, there were many other accounts of strange experiences. It was only now that Li Fan truly understood what Chen Ying had told him earlier. The fallen immortal realm was a world formed by the consciousness of a true immortal before their fall. In this realm, unimaginable events could occur. In such a magnificent world, I'm trapped in the small Ningyuan city. It's really hard to accept. Li Fan couldn't help but sigh. I wonder if it will be the same the next time I enter. Casually glancing at the Seeking Immortals section once again, Li Fan was about to leave. But his attention was irresistibly drawn to a certain phrase. Gathering, and, exchange. Li Fan couldn't help but click on it. Chapter 206, Pre-Expedition Realm. Unlike Li Fan, who had been trapped alone in Ningyuan City, other cultivators could form alliances to explore the fallen immortal realm together. By using an appropriate medium during the ritual, they could reach a peculiar space between reality and illusion before entering the fallen immortal realm. In this space, cultivators could exchange information and even trade items. Generally, this space would also be equipped with a special formation. This formation, a fusion of ritual stabilizing formations and mental connection amplifying formations, allowed up to 4 cultivators to form a team to explore the fallen immortal realm. Cultivators referred to such spaces as pre-expedition realms. It was said that the earliest pre-expedition realm was created by a powerful Tao integration stage cultivator for the convenience of inviting friends to explore the fallen immortal realm together. Due to its great convenience, other cultivators gradually followed suit. After thousands of years of development, numerous pre-expedition realms had emerged. Some were open to the public, accommodating tens of thousands of cultivators simultaneously. For a small fee, anyone could enter. On the other hand, some pre-expedition realms were private. Only the owner of the pre-expedition realm knew the medium, and outsiders couldn't enter without permission. The essence of a pre-expedition realm was to open a spatial rift connecting the fallen immortal realm and the real world for transit. However, these spatial rifts were unstable, so every few decades, pre-expedition realms needed maintenance and reinforcement, incurring considerable costs. Only truly great cultivators had the ability and willingness to maintain a pre-expedition realm. Over the course of thousands of years, many of these cultivators had fallen, and the pre-expedition realms they opened were mostly abandoned. Some individuals seized the opportunity, searching for these ownerless pre-expedition realms, refurbishing and redecorating them, and then selling them at high prices. While the prices were steep, often requiring hundreds of thousands of contribution points, purchasing one was still more cost-effective than building a new one. Therefore, some cultivators were willing to buy. However, if one had many pre-expedition realms and couldn't sell them, it could become a burden or even lead to losses. To address this, some individuals engaged in leasing unused pre-expedition realms. Instead of paying a large sum of contribution points up front, Cultivators could pay a modest annual contribution to gain the right to use a pre-expedition realm. There were few cultivators willing to rent pre-expedition realms, especially for the low-priced public ones. To attract customers, they posted numerous promotional messages on the Seeking Immortals board. Li Fan was drawn in by these messages. Pre-expedition realms, interesting. Li Fan thought for a moment, applied for a fake account, Mingyu Palace Master, to conceal his identity, and then contacted one of the information providers. This person was named Violet Mist Immortal Sage. It was unclear if they truly had Dao integration stage cultivation or if, like Li Fan, they were also using a false identity. Fellow Taoist Violet Mist, what is the specific price for leasing a pre-expedition realm? Li Fan inquired. Not long after, the reply came. The price varies depending on the size of the pre-expedition realm. The lowest is 8,000 contribution points per year, and the highest goes up to over 10,000. The tone was indifferent, lacking any emotional expression. Li Fan asked again, only the spiritual consciousness intensity of the Golden Core realm can support exploration of the fallen immortal realm. Does this apply to pre-expedition realms as well? Can Qi condensation and foundation establishment cultivators enter? It's for the convenience of your juniors, right? Rest assured, the pre-expedition realm is not part of the fallen immortal realm but an independent spatial rift. There are no requirements for spiritual consciousness. As long as you have spiritual consciousness, you can enter through the ritual. Perhaps seeing that Li Fan genuinely seemed to have leasing needs, the tone of the Violet Mist Immortal Sage became slightly warmer. He explained, if holding the ritual involves forcibly transporting a portion of our spiritual consciousness into the fallen immortal realm using its power, then the pre-expedition realm is created by setting up a space in advance during transit, disrupting this process. Different media correspond to different spatial coordinates. Is it only possible to enter the pre-expedition realm while in the Xuanwang realm? What about the small worlds and caves affiliated with the Xuanwang realm within the effective range? As long as they haven't separated from the Xuanwang realm, they are under the cover of the fallen immortal realm, so there is no problem. After getting confirmation from the other party, Li Fan felt somewhat tempted. However, he didn't reply hastily. Instead, he inquired with two other cultivators who were advertising leasing. The answers he received were consistent. 8,000 contribution points per year was the lowest price. It seems they have reached a consensus. Li Fan then contacted Violet Mist Immortal Sage again, saying, kindly send me the information about these pre-expedition realms. This time, the response was much quicker. As soon as the message was sent, a detailed introduction to hundreds of pre-expedition realms with various sceneries appeared in front of Li Fan. To maximize the leasing and selling of these pre-expedition realms, Violet Mist Immortal Sage had put considerable effort into it. Every single one of these spatial rifts had a different scenery. There were scenes of mountains in a vast sea of clouds, islands in a vast ocean, and ancient sect ruins with a mysterious atmosphere. If you fancy a particular pre-expedition realm but aren't satisfied with the scenery, I can also remodel it for you. Of course, the price will be a bit higher. Violet Mist Immortal Sage added. After leasing a pre-expedition realm, can it be ensured that no outsiders will intrude? Li Fan chose one without rushing to make a decision and asked carefully. The ritual medium is like an encrypted spatial coordinate. Generally speaking, without the guidance of the medium, any consciousness entering the fallen immortal realm cannot intrude into a private pre-expedition realm. Of course, nothing is absolute. In the long years, there has been one such mishap. But it happened only once, so there's no need to worry, explained Violet Mist Immortal Sage. For each pre-expedition realm, we provide at least 10 media. If it's not enough, you can purchase more at any time. Hearing this, Li Fan nodded slowly. He then sent over the details of the selected pre-expedition realm. I want to lease this one. Rent starts from 1 year, with a 3-month deposit. If you need to renew the lease, you must pay the rent again at the same time each year. Full year rental is required before cancellation, and the deposit will be refunded after cancellation, Violet Mist Immortal Sage skillfully explained. Li Fan asked, is there a discount for long-term leasing? Violet Mist Immortal Sage paused and said, negotiable. If you rent for 10 years, I can offer you a 5% discount. If you rent for 20 years, I can offer you a 10% discount. For 20 years and above, I can offer a 20% discount. Then I'll rent it for 30 years, Li Fan said straightforwardly. Chapter 207, Feipeng rises with the wind. The pre-expedition realm that Li Fan selected had the lowest rental price of 8,000 contribution points per year. Although it was relatively small in scale, the scenery suited Li Fan's taste. Instead of a picturesque scene of immortal splendor, it was built upon a gigantic skeletal left hand. The surrounding space was dark and silent, and the giant bone hand floated in the endless void. According to the Violet Mist Immortal Sage, the conceptualization of this scene originated from the true immortal who gave rise to the entire fallen immortal realm in a single thought. After negotiating with Violet Mist Immortal Sage and agreeing to a 30-year lease with payment every 10 years, the transaction was completed with the signing of a commercial contract. Li Fan transferred 64,000 contribution points. At the same time, he received a storage ring containing 3 items, a miniature skeletal left hand, 10 white bone fingers, and a jade slip. After picking up the jade slip and reading it for a moment, Li Fan instantly understood its usage. The miniature white bone left hand served as the control center for the pre-expedition realm. Activating the ritual with it granted the highest authority over the pre-expedition realm. The 10 white bone fingers served as the media. Li Fan performed the ceremony within the Tianquan mirror. 4 items representing daily life were placed at the corners, while the white bone left hand was suspended in the center. Blessings bestowed by the celestial sovereign of Xuanwang. Li Fan silently recited. Since he had brought back the purple heaven soul observation technique from the fallen immortal realm not long ago, he was still under restrictions and couldn't enter the fallen immortal realm again. However, entering the pre-expedition realm posed no problem. The 4 items, along with the white bone left hand, emitted a faint glow. A slight dizziness came over Li Fan, and in an instant, he felt the environment around him change. An ancient and desolate atmosphere pervaded, with 5 gigantic white bone fingers slanting towards the sky. Li Fan was standing at the bottom of the bone hand. Compared to the enormous bone, he was like an ant. If I hadn't been mentally prepared, I'm afraid I would have been startled at first sight. Well, it should be enough to fool those kids. Satisfied, Li Fan nodded. With a thought, he instantly appeared on the thumb bone. The teleportation array to enter the fallen immortal realm was arranged here. For now, Su Xiaomei and the others didn't need it, and he couldn't let them discover it. With a wave of his hand, Li Fan hid the array. Then, he thoroughly checked the area to ensure no traces that could leak information were left behind before exiting this space. The stage is set, it's time for the actors to appear. Although they are still young, cultivating immortality should start from childhood. After spending so many contribution points, I need to recover the costs as soon as possible. Thinking like this, Li Fan, after making preparations, immediately left 10,000 Immortals Island and headed straight for Dali. The current Dali realm was shrouded in a faint sense of hopelessness. Several months had passed since the agreed-upon date to receive supplies from the Immortal Master. The supplies had already been collected, but the Immortal Master was still nowhere to be seen. The central volcano in Dali seemed to be growing increasingly active recently. Thick black smoke billowed into the sky, visible even from the capital thousands of miles away. The officials in the court wore desolate expressions all day long, and the Dali Emperor seemed to have lost his appetite. In the capital, rumors had been circulating in secret, claiming that the Immortal Master had abandoned Dali. With the imminent destruction of Dali, the end was not far off. The Emperor used draconian measures and executed anyone spreading such rumors, managing to somewhat control the speed of rumor dissemination. However, he couldn't prevent the spread of despair. Amidst this oppressive atmosphere, a strange event occurred in the capital one day. In the black night, a meteor illuminated the sky and flew towards the imperial palace. It hit the central palace where morning court was usually held, creating a deep crater and turning the palace into ruins. Fortunately, the incident occurred late at night, causing only a few guards to suffer minor injuries and no other casualties. Afterward, the Emperor personally supervised the excavation and discovered that the meteor from that night had miraculously remained intact. What left the officials and courtiers of Dali bewildered and at a loss was that this so-called meteor turned out to be a white bone left hand. Crystal clear like jade, it possessed a mystical quality. Although the Emperor knew that this bone hand must be a precious item, after researching for a long time, he couldn't figure out its purpose. In the end, he had no choice but to let the matter drop and ordered it to be placed in the deepest part of the treasury under strict guard. One night after the commotion about the bone hand gradually subsided, in the Yi family residence in the capital. Mercy, Senior. Yi Feipeng abruptly woke up from a nightmare, sweat covering his forehead. With a frightened expression on his 9-year-old face, his chest rose and fell violently with intense breaths. Once his emotions settled, he realized that something was off. Blankly staring at his small body and the surroundings, which were both familiar and unfamiliar, Yi Feipeng's eyes were filled with confusion. "Master, what's wrong?" A maid in the adjacent room, hearing the commotion, hastily rushed in wearing only a coat. "It's nothing, you can go." Yi Feipeng dismissed her, rubbed his temples, and felt a chaotic mess in his mind. A dream, rebirth. Just now, Yi Feipeng experienced a long and vivid dream. In the dream, he was brought out of Dali by an immortal master 10 years later, settling on Luli Island. After 5 years of cultivation, he finally expelled the miasma from his body, successfully condensing qi and becoming a true cultivator. Unfortunately, the life of a cultivator was not as beautiful as he had imagined. It was even far less carefree than being a dandy young master in Dali. Running around like an ox or horse every day, it took him a year to finally save enough contribution points to buy a cultivation method. Just as he felt accomplished in breaking through to the qi condensation stage within 3 years, a shocking event occurred in the Kong Yun Sea, completely altering his values. Crimson flame burns the sea, Haobo integrates the Tao. Yi Feipeng clenched his fists tightly. His fingernails pierced his flesh, but he didn't mind. Carefully recalling the detailed reviews of this historical event by the cultivators later, he was afraid of missing any details. 16 years of cultivation to achieve the golden core stage, then overcoming levels to slay a Dao integration level figure. Becoming the youngest Dao integration immortal sage in history. Jealousy and ambition filled Yi Feipeng's eyes. With the Kong Yun Sea as his aid, he seized the critical moments of the battle between the 5 soul transformation true monarchs and the Crimson Flame. He, Zhang Haobo, could do it. Why can't I? As long as I go to the cultivation world 10 years earlier, with the countless opportunities in my memories, I have great foresight. I might be able to replace him, becoming a Dao integration immortal sage who dominates an entire region. This should be my fate. Yi Feipeng's eyes were bloodshot, and his mind was filled with countless thoughts. Suddenly, he felt a severe headache, unable to endure any longer. His vision darkened, and he fainted. Beside him, Li Fan's figure slowly appeared in the night. Chapter 208. Feipeng's Cultivation Chronicle. Still too young. Even with my secret assistance, it's difficult for him to endure such a massive impact of information. Li Fan looked at Yi Feipeng, who remained in a state of unconscious pain, silently contemplating. He took out a spirit awakening fruit from the storage ring and fed it to Yi Feipeng. Afterwards, he used his spiritual qi to help Yi Feipeng refine it. Soon, Yi Feipeng's complexion relaxed. Li Fan gently stroked his head, activating the cloud water illusory dream art again, meticulously refining Yi Feipeng's memories of his previous life. When Yi Feipeng woke up again the next day, drenched in sweat, his expression was much calmer. He wrote down a prescription and ordered someone to fetch the required ingredients. While taking a hot bath, he planned the path of his rise in this world. Compared to yesterday's chaotic thoughts, his mind was significantly clearer today. With the help of the cleansing heart mantra and the prescription, I should be able to expel the miasma in my body. But without spiritual energy, I can't cultivate, rendering my efforts futile. I must not wait for 10 more years, I have to seize this opportunity and leave early. In Yi Feipeng's memory, about half a month later, a cultivator would arrive in Dali by chance. This cultivator wasn't the one who had been cooperating with Dali previously, so he was unwilling to risk helping the citizens of Dali cross secretly. Ignoring the desperate pleas of the Dali officials, this cultivator was about to leave. Suddenly, the emperor remembered the white bone hand that had fallen in the imperial palace not long ago. Taking advantage of the situation, the emperor declared that Dali possessed a legendary treasure. As long as the cultivator was willing to take a group of people to the cultivation world, he would present this extraordinary treasure. Perhaps due to fear of the immortal mortal miasma, the cultivator did not directly resort to force. After some consideration, he agreed. However, he had his conditions. He would only take children with an innate talent for cultivation, and the number couldn't be too large. So, the cultivator personally selected 10 children from the descendants of the powerful families in Dali and took them to the cultivation world. Yi Feipeng remembered that among them were Xiao Heng of the Xiao family and Su Chengyu of the Su family. He, however, did not meet the qualifications due to his insufficient talent. Thus, he wasted 10 years in Dali. In my previous life, when I was in the mid-chi condensation stage, I once encountered Xiaoheng by chance. At that time, he was already in the foundation establishment stage, far surpassing me. Cultivation must grow step by step. Wasting 10 years results in completely different achievements in the future. This life will definitely not be the same. As long as I can break free from this predicament, I will be like a fish leaping into the vast sea or a bird soaring in the sky. Yi Feipeng's eyes gleamed, walking out of the wooden tub and closing his eyes to practice the cleansing heart mantra. Perhaps due to the benefits of reincarnation, he felt that the efficiency of expelling the miasma from his body in this life was much faster than in the previous one. In just over 10 days, he almost completely rid himself of the miasma. This made Yi Feipeng even more delighted. However, in the following days, Yi Feipeng paused the process of purging the miasma. A mortal without any miasma in his body would be too conspicuous. If it aroused the suspicion of that immortal, it would be unfavorable. In the current state, he seemed like a mortal with little mortal miasma in his body. It ensured that he would be selected without attracting much attention, an optimal balance. With this new opportunity, it's important to be cautious, Yi Feipeng reminded himself continually. Following the same script as his memory, 5 days later, that cultivator arrived in the capital. After another half day, along with thousands of bewildered children, Yi Feipeng arrived at the square to be selected by the cultivator. Even for a reborn person, his fate still rested in the hands of others at this moment. This made Yi Feipeng somewhat nervous. Fortunately, when the cultivator's gaze swept over him, it paused for a moment, and he was ultimately selected. This made Yi Feipeng relieved and somewhat excited. Not long after, the other children who were not chosen left. The vast square now only had 10 anxious children, including Yi Feipeng, along with the cultivator. The cultivator summoned a flying boat, ready to take them away. At this moment, Su Changyu suddenly shouted, "Immortal, please save my sister." Yi Feipeng's heart moved. In his memories, it seemed that the cultivation talent of this little sister was even more terrifying than Xiaoheng. In the previous life, before his own death, he vaguely heard that she seemed to have achieved the realm of golden core. Although the cultivator was a bit impatient, he still went to the Su family. When he returned, he had a joyful expression. So, the group gained another infant who was still in swaddling clothes. Before departing, the cultivator distributed the cleansing heart mantra and the accompanying medicine, instructing them to cultivate on their own first. After flying for more than 10 days through Dali, the flying boat finally broke through the immortal extinction formation, arriving in the cultivation world. Feeling the dense spiritual energy around, Yi Feipeng was immediately immersed in deep ecstasy. Carefully guiding the spiritual energy into his body, Yi Feipeng officially began his transformation into a cultivator. After an unknown period, a thunderous shout suddenly exploded near his ears, waking him from his cultivation. "Which cultivator dares to smuggle mortals?" The thunderous voice echoed in his ears. Amidst the dizziness, Yi Feipeng's heart jumped. A bad premonition suddenly surged. "Fellow Taoist, please let me explain." The cultivator who brought them out hurriedly tried to explain. However, the other party seemed to have no intention of showing mercy. "Stop the nonsense. According to the laws of the 10,000 Immortals Alliance, those who smuggle mortals across the boundary must die." Boom! With the opponent's indifferent voice, Yi Feipeng felt the flying boat he was on seemed to be hit, violently shaking. "You're really going too far. If you want to kill me, let's see if you have the ability." The thunderous clash of techniques continuously resounded. The waves of spiritual energy stirred up were like hurricanes. The flying boat was suddenly as fragile as drifting duckweed, swaying and about to fall at any moment. Inside the cabin, the people from Dali had all awakened from their cultivation, except for Su Xiaomei, who was still sleeping soundly. Although they had some cultivation talent, they were still children of about 10 years old. Moreover, they were the pampered children of wealthy families and had never witnessed mortal combat, let alone the scene of the two immortals fighting. All of them turned pale, panicking and bewildered. Only Yi Feipeng kept his composure, looking outside the flying boat. He saw that the two cultivators seemed to have similar strengths, engaged in intense battle. The momentum was grand, with radiance filling the sky. It was impossible to see the specific scenes of their confrontation. But judging from the aftermath of their clash, both of them were at least at the foundation establishment stage. This flying boat was not a formidable magical device from the beginning. It was already damaged from a frontal attack by that foundation establishment cultivator who suddenly appeared just now. Now, under the impact of the battle between the two sides, it is on the verge of complete destruction. Moreover, it seems that the matter of illegal border crossing has already been exposed. Staying here is a dead end. Yi Feipeng forced himself to calm down, thinking rapidly. I operated this flying boat in my previous life. As long as there are no restrictions, any qi condensation cultivator can drive it. Thinking of this, Yi Feipeng rushed to the front of the ship, leaving the bewildered children behind. Xiao Heng was a bit more alert, following him to see if there was any way to help. Su Changyu was the oldest among these children, but he hadn't completely dispelled the miasma in his body yet, he was still just an ordinary person. Knowing that he couldn't be of much help, he didn't join in the commotion. He just took care of Su Xiaomei and calmed the crowd. Fatty, what are you doing? Xiao Heng walked into the bow of the ship and saw Yi Feipeng touching the empty space in front of him. Sweat beads kept falling from his forehead, looking extremely strenuous. Yi Feipeng didn't answer and instead exerted all his efforts to control the flying boat beneath his feet. Oh, I see, you want to control the flying boat and escape, Xiao Heng observed for a while and suddenly realized. Why isn't it moving? Yi Feipeng, irritated by the incessant questions, felt weak in his mind and involuntarily fell to the ground. Let me try. Yi Feipeng was about to scold Xiao Heng but suddenly felt the flying boat under him trembling slightly. Isn't it easy? You can control the flying boat. The two voices sounded simultaneously. A hint of surprise flashed across Yi Feipeng's face, followed by a few traces of jealousy upon hearing the words. However, life and death were at stake now, and he couldn't afford to care about such matters. Suppressing his emotions, Yi Feipeng hastily urged, "Quick, steer the flying boat away from here." Innocently, Xiao Heng's voice came, "Where can we escape to? Everything around us looks the same, and we can't tell the direction." Yi Feipeng immediately became anxious, "Just choose any direction." Before he could finish his words, a scene suddenly appeared in his mind. As if he had figured out something, Yi Feipeng quickly looked outside the flying boat, carefully distinguishing the surrounding scenery. On the not-too-distant sea surface, 9 whirlpools of varying sizes were distributed. The sea currents were turbulent, making them particularly conspicuous. I seem to have been to this sea area when I tried to return to Dali in my previous life. The islands guarded by the 10,000 Immortals Alliance are not an option. But in the northwest direction, there seems to be an uninhabited island. Let's go there to lay low for now. Quickly determining the direction, Yi Feipeng pointed and said to Xiao Heng, "Quick, fly towards that direction." Upon hearing this, Xiao Heng immediately manipulated the flying boat, escaping from the battlefield unnoticed by the 2 Foundation establishment cultivators who were seemingly engaged in a fierce battle. Yi Feipeng couldn't help feeling excited. After flying for more than a day, they finally saw a small island covered with dense forest. "We're here, fly into the forest, and let's hide first," Yi Feipeng quickly instructed. Feeling relieved, Xiao Heng carefully landed the flying boat in the forest. Yi Feipeng had everyone pluck branches and leaves, placing them on the surface of the flying boat as camouflage. Then, the group returned to the cabin to discuss the next steps. "We just arrived in the cultivation world, and we encountered such a thing. We're really unlucky," Xiao Heng sighed. "It's already good to be alive. Didn't you hear that our illegal crossing has been discovered?" Another child, about the same age as Xiao Heng, said. Yi Feipeng said, "Now we can only hide on this island for a while. When the storm passes, we can think of a way to leave." The people sighed in frustration, their little faces full of confusion. "That's the only way. Fortunately, there is a water source and fruit trees on this island. We don't have to worry about food for the time being." Su Changyu sighed. The future was uncertain, and everyone's mood was not good. As night fell, they soon fell into a deep sleep. In the middle of the night, Yi Feipeng suddenly felt a strange sensation and woke up from his sleep. He quietly approached the exterior of the flying boat, only to see a streak of escape light descending from the sky in an instant. The target was directly aimed at the flying boat concealed below. Oh no, Yi Feipeng's heart jolted. Before he could react, the light had already arrived in front of him. "Hurry, help me inside." The person who came was the cultivator who had taken them out of Dali. However, at this moment, he was covered in blood, weak, and seemed to be seriously injured. Nevertheless, he was still a Foundation establishment cultivator. Yi Feipeng didn't dare to act rashly, responded with an affirmation, and was about to go forward to assist. But then he saw the other person suddenly spit out a mouthful of blood and fall forward to the ground. After convulsing a few times, he never moved again. Senior. Yi Feipeng immediately let out a cry of surprise. At this moment, an anomaly occurred in the sky above. Qi condensation cultivator Fan Li cultivated the Tao for 165 years. He achieved the foundation with the heavenly treasure, Eclipse Staff. He suffered severe injuries in a battle in the Kongyun Sea and was unable to recover. Now, he has died and has returned to the Tao. The brilliant scene, like fireworks, illuminated the sky. Yi Feipeng was completely stunned by this unexpected spectacle. He died. He was dumbfounded. He never expected that this cultivator named Fan Li, who had barely escaped a disaster, would die right in front of him. An ordinary bamboo staff slowly emerged beside his body. Looking at the corpse of the Foundation Establishment cultivator, a bold idea suddenly appeared in Yi Feipeng's mind. Holding his breath, he approached quietly. When he reached the side of the corpse, he stayed still for a while. After a while, he slowly squatted down and, illuminated by the firework-like announcement overhead, began to search the body quickly. "What are you doing?" In the silent night, a voice suddenly sounded behind him. Yi Feipeng was startled and almost fell to the ground. Turning around, he saw Xiao Heng looking at him with astonishment while he was searching the corpse. "Hush!" Yi Feipeng couldn't help gesturing for silence. Xiao Heng realized it now. He approached and whispered, "What happened to this cultivator? Why did he die? I guess he suffered severe injuries in the fight with that person just now. He barely managed to fly here but couldn't hold on any longer and died." Yi Feipeng casually replied, continuing to search the corpse. Why doesn't he even have a storage ring? After flipping for a long time, he couldn't find what he was looking for. Yi Feipeng couldn't help but complain in a low voice. "Storage ring, is it this?" Xiao Heng picked up a ring from the ground and asked. Chapter 209, Illusory Dream Art and Truth. "It's this. Give it to me quickly." Seeing the ring, Yi Feipeng's face lit up, and he was about to step forward to grab it. However, Xiao Heng easily dodged him. "I found it. Why should I give it to you?" Xiao Heng showed a cunning smile, firmly holding the storage ring in his palm. Yi Feipeng squinted his eyes, and a dangerous idea involuntarily flashed in his mind. However, after assessing the power gap between them, Yi Feipeng ultimately suppressed the turmoil within. "Xiao Heng, we're all people from Dali. Now that we are stranded in the cultivation world with an uncertain future, we should unite. Shouldn't we avoid internal conflicts over a storage ring?" Yi Feipeng reasoned. Xiao Heng nodded, "You're right. The things inside this storage ring shouldn't be monopolized by one person, right?" Yi Feipeng asked again. Xiao Heng snorted, "Am I that kind of person?" Yi Feipeng couldn't help but rejoice. "Take out the things from the storage ring, and let's share them between us." "How can it be just the two of us? There's also Changyu and Xiaomei's share." "Don't worry, I'll handle the distribution fairly. People from Dali don't deceive each other." Xiao Heng patted his chest, guaranteeing. Yi Feipeng hesitated but had to endure temporarily, facing Xiao Heng, who was currently much stronger. "In the future, I'll deal with you," Yi Feipeng thought to himself. Xiao Heng appeared oblivious to the underlying tension. Instinctively, he widened the distance between himself and Yi Feipeng, taking out items from the storage ring one by one. A pile of communication talismans. A pile of spirit stones, a tattered umbrella. A slightly yellowed formation map, along with a white bone hand. And then, nothing. Xiao Heng was somewhat dumbfounded. To prevent himself from missing anything, he double-checked. "Is this all?" Xiao Heng was a bit incredulous. "Is this cultivator so poor? How is that possible?" Yi Feipeng completely disbelieved. Snatching the storage ring, he examined it himself. However, Xiao Heng indeed did not lie. This Foundation Establishment cultivator left so little wealth. No cultivation techniques, no decent spiritual treasures. These things were basically worthless. It was far too different from the dream of overnight wealth. Under the huge psychological gap, Yi Feipeng was immediately frustrated, and angrily threw the storage ring to the ground. Seeing this, Xiao Heng quickly picked it up. After a while, Yi Feipeng gradually calmed his disappointment. Perhaps it was because of the fierce battle earlier that he used up everything. Maybe he handed over valuable things to survive and keep his life. Yi Feipeng speculated. Anyway, he's a Foundation Establishment cultivator. It's impossible for him to be so poor, right? In my previous life, even as a Qi condensation cultivator, At this point, Yi Feipeng's thoughts paused. He carefully thought about his situation in his previous life. Apart from communication talismans, there was almost nothing else in his storage ring. After all, cultivation techniques, contribution points, and similar items couldn't be carried around. Actually, this cultivator might really be this poor. Yi Feipeng couldn't help but hesitate. What's this pile of things? Just when he was immersed in self-doubt, he saw Xiaoheng squatting beside a pile of communication talismans, picking up one and preparing to test its function. Yi Feipeng's expression changed. He approached, snatched the talisman from Xiaoheng's hand, then threw it on the ground and picked up a stone. He smashed it vigorously. What are you doing? Seeing this, Xiaoheng couldn't help but ask loudly. What do you know? This is a communication talisman. If you accidentally activate it, it could expose our information. When others come seeking trouble, we won't be able to escape. Yi Feipeng snorted. Without hesitation, he destroyed all the communication talismans left by Fan Li. Xiaoheng understood that what Yi Feipeng did was right, but he was still a bit unwilling. How do you know these are communication talismans? Yi Feipeng was about to say something but stopped. I just know. In the end, he replied with a lack of patience. Xiaoheng had a disbelieving look on his face. Yi Feipeng suddenly felt a surge of anger. However, after a second thought, he took a deep breath, and suppressed his anger. Forget it, forget it. He's just a little brat. Why bother with him when you're starting a new life? Ignoring Xiaoheng, Yi Feipeng, under the cover of the night, searched Fan Li's body again, attempting to find something else. Unfortunately, he gained nothing. Sighing, he said to Xiaoheng, "Come, lend me a hand. Help me throw him into the sea." Xiaoheng was puzzled. Why? Yi Feipeng felt a bit of a headache but patiently explained, "You want everyone else to know that we inherited the legacy of this foundation establishment cultivator. There wasn't much valuable stuff to begin with, and if more people share, we won't get anything." Xiaoheng couldn't help but nod seriously. Watching Yi Feipeng struggling to move the body, Xiaoheng stepped forward and easily lifted the corpse. Yi Feipeng couldn't help but be astonished. Why do you have so much strength? Xiaoheng was also puzzled. I don't know. I didn't have this much strength before. Yi Feipeng squinted his eyes, carefully observing Xiaoheng's body. Under his perception, a lot of spiritual energy spontaneously flowed into Xiaoheng's body. Unbeknownst to Xiaoheng, his physical body was being strengthened, and his cultivation realm was being elevated. What kind of innate talent is this? Yi Feipeng couldn't help feeling bitterness in his heart. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. No matter how high his talent is, I am a reborn person. My goal is to become a Tao integration immortal sage. Comforting himself in his heart, Yi Feipeng turned his head away and stopped looking at Xiaoheng. They picked up many stones together and stuffed them into the corpse's clothes. Then, with unified effort, they tossed the corpse into the sea. Watching the body slowly sinking into the depths, Yi Feipeng couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. At this moment, Xiaoheng started making a fuss again. Fatty, what did you mean by foundation establishment? When you looked at me with that expression just now, did you see something? How do you suddenly know so much? Are you hiding something from us? Yi Feipeng turned a deaf ear, pretending not to hear. Approaching the pile of spoils, he said, "Dawn is approaching. Let's divide these things." Xiaoheng glanced at the scattered items on the ground and then scrutinized Yi Feipeng. Eyes shifting, he said, "You first tell me what these things are." Yi Feipeng cast a disdainful look at Xiaoheng but still began to count them one by one. 568 low-grade spirit stones. Better than nothing. This umbrella seems to be a protective spiritual weapon. But it's already quite damaged, barely usable, and is not worth much. This formation map is in decent condition. Unfortunately, it's defensive in nature. It can be set up next to the flying boat to avoid disturbances from the wild beasts on the island. Yi Feipeng explained. Xiaoheng stared intently, pointing to the last remaining bone hand, and this. This is. Yi Feipeng picked up the bone and examined it carefully, unable to discern its purpose. I don't know about this. However, that cultivator named Fan Li was deceived by our Dali Emperor. This is not some legendary treasure. It just fell from the sky not long ago. Who knows what use it has? Yi Feipeng explained with a sneer. Fell from the sky, Xiaoheng exclaimed. Then, he looked at Yi Feipeng with some admiration. Fatty, how do you know everything? I've never heard of these things. Under Xiaoheng's gaze, Yi Feipeng felt a bit complacent. I know a lot. Seeing this, Xiao Heng quickly said, "Then I'll choose this bone hand. Since you're so knowledgeable but you don't even know what it's used for, it must have a significant origin." Yi Feipeng hastily said, "Then I'll take this pile of spirit stones." "All right," Xiao Heng clapped his hands. "This umbrella is for Xiao Mei, and this formation map is for Changyu." In an instant, the spoils were divided, and Xiao Heng nodded in satisfaction. Seeing this, Yi Feipeng felt secretly triumphant. Talent is nothing. After all, he lacks the foresight of a reborn person like me. Choosing external items has no real use. Spirit stones can be converted into contribution points, which can then be used to exchange for cultivation techniques. With this pile of spirit stones, after joining the 10,000 Immortals Alliance, I can save a lot of time running errands. Sooner or later, I'll exchange for a chi condensation technique. In the cultivation world, cultivation techniques are fundamental. However, he still knew the principle of quietly getting rich, keeping his self-satisfaction in his heart without showing it on his face. "All right, it's decided. No backing out." Yi Feipeng extended his hand to shake with Xiao Heng. However, after some thought, he, being a reborn person, couldn't act so childishly. So, he retracted his hand. "Keep the items in your possession for now. After it's safe and we can officially cultivate, you can distribute them to us." Xiao Heng nodded and stored all the scattered items back into the storage ring. "Let's go back to sleep. Move quietly, don't let anyone notice," Yi Feipeng whispered, then returned with Xiao Heng to the flying boat. They fell into a deep sleep. Under the moonlight, Li Fan, who had been concealing his presence and observing the two from start to finish, shook his head in secret. After all, he is not a true reborn person. He's just a 9-year-old child that has been forcibly fed a bunch of past life memories that are far from perfect. Yi Feipeng's actions and habits are still quite childlike. The nature of his heart is still as innocent as a child's. They say experiences can influence and shape one's character to a certain extent. But my cloud water illusory dream art is far from being able to change a person's character to that degree. I tried my best to weave genuine memories. During the days before leaving Dali, my mind and spirit were significantly depleted. Unfortunately, a person experiences too much in their lifetime. To completely fabricate every detail of a real life is still too difficult. Li Fan suddenly thought of the third option that had never been used in truth again. Retaining the memory of one person close to oneself and being able to have that person inherit this memory. The disadvantage of this option of truth is that it is uncontrollable. Perhaps combining truth with the cloud water illusory dream art might achieve the authentic regression I desire. While thinking about this, Li Fan entered the flying boat. He made everyone fall into a deep sleep. From Xiao Heng's storage ring, he took out the bone hand. He took a section of the hand bone and used it as a medium. Then, he set up a ritual. Afterward, with a light touch on Xiao Heng's forehead, he activated the cloud water illusory dream art. Immediately, Xiao Heng got up from the ground as if he was sleepwalking. Under his breath, he recited silently, "Blessings bestowed by the celestial sovereign of Xuanwang." An inexplicable force descended. Xiao Heng's consciousness instantly appeared in Li Fan's least pre-expedition realm. Chapter 210. The Past of the Fallen Immortal. Xiao Heng rubbed his eyes and looked around in a daze. The eerie atmosphere surrounding him made him instinctively uneasy. In the distance, 5 peculiar and conspicuous white pillars stood crookedly, reaching straight into the sky. Looking down at his feet, Xiao Heng noticed the ground was made of the same white material. Where is this? Xiao Heng felt puzzled. He remembered he was on a deserted island, wasn't he? Could it be a dream? Subconsciously, Xiao Heng pinched himself. Ouch! The intense pain instantly woke Xiao Heng up. This is not a dream. Fear crept into Xiao Heng's heart. He shivered and surveyed his surroundings. In the distance, there was a dark, endless void, permeated with an ancient and desolate aura. The ground under his feet and the 5 white pillars in the distance seemed to be connected, floating in this space. Xiao Heng suddenly felt a sense of familiarity with this place, as if he had seen it somewhere before. After carefully observing for a while, a scene flashed through his mind. Various details became more and more similar. Suddenly, Xiao Heng was shocked and fell to the ground, trembling all over. This is that bone hand. Such a bizarre occurrence exceeded Xiao Heng's cognitive limits. Fear instantly took over his mind, and he instinctively curled up like an ostrich, burying his head in his arms. However, after a while, the fear of the unknown couldn't suppress his curiosity. Seeing no other movements in this space, Xiao Heng's curiosity gradually overwhelmed his terror. He got up and cautiously explored the area. The region he was in, the palm, was relatively spacious, and he didn't have to worry about falling into the endless void. Most of the surroundings were ruins, indicating a fierce battle that had once occurred, destroying all the buildings. Navigating through the debris, after a moment, something caught Xiao Heng's attention. A broken sword was stuck upright in the ground. The sword was covered in dark red bloodstains. As Xiao Heng approached, he realized that the sword had first pierced through a skull before being embedded in the ground. This place must have existed for who knows how long. This sword can endure for so long without much damage. It must be an extraordinary treasure. Xiao Heng thought to himself as he approached. Grasping the hilt with both hands, he pulled the sword out with force. However, before Xiao Heng could examine the newly acquired treasure, the ground beneath his feet suddenly shook violently. Despicable 10,000 Immortals Alliance. The skull that had been stabbed by the long sword actually let out a roar and flew up into the sky. Once again, Xiao Heng was frightened by this scene and fell to the ground. With a clang, the long sword in his hand also fell to the ground. Seemingly attracted by the noise, a pitch-black light shot out from the dark eye sockets of the skull, hitting the sword's blade directly. Boom! The long sword exploded in a burst of light. The instant the light shot out, Xiao Heng instinctively jumped to avoid the explosion. Although he evaded the explosion, he was still frightened, sweating profusely. "Senior, spare me, spare me!" Xiao Heng knelt on the ground, kowtowing. While kowtowing, he shouted, keeping his eyes fixed on the skull, ready to escape at any moment. It seemed that Xiao Heng's shouts had an effect. The skull's voice became somewhat puzzled. "Huh! Not from the 10,000 Immortals Alliance. Where did this little kid come from?" The skull then flew up into the sky, circled around, and after a while, returned to its original position, looking somewhat lost, so much time has passed. Seeing that the skull seemed to have no hostile intent, Xiao Heng breathed a sigh of relief. He tentatively asked, "Senior, where is this? Can you send me back?" The skull sneered, "You, kid, are really strange. Since you can come here, how do you not know where this is? You're even asking me." Xiao Heng looked innocent. "Senior, I didn't lie. I really don't know where this is." HMPH. The skull, full of disbelief, quickly flew closer, making several turns. With its dark eye sockets, it carefully examined Xiao Heng. No traces of the ritual. How did you get in?" After a long time, as if it had discovered something, the skull questioned suspiciously. Xiao Heng was puzzled by the question. But soon, he realized, the hand bone. "I have a hand bone exactly like the one under us. Senior, is this place inside that hand bone?" Hand bone. The skull suddenly understood, so that's how it is. "Kid, are you not from the Xuanwang realm?" the skull asked. Xuanwang realm, what's that? Xiao Heng was somewhat puzzled. It's commonly known as the cultivation world. Kid, in the world where you come from, are there legends of cultivators? Xiao Heng looked strange, thought for a moment, and then honestly confessed, "I won't hide it from you, senior. I used to be in a place called the Dali realm. But not long ago, a senior cultivator brought me and a few others from my hometown to the cultivation world." "What?" The skull seemed shocked, quickly asking, "Is your main body in the cultivation world now? Are there any cultivators from the 10,000 Immortals Alliance around you?" Xiao Heng shook his head. "The senior who took us out of Dali seemed to have encountered a cultivator from the 10,000 Immortals Alliance. They claimed he committed some crime, and they fought. I took the opportunity to escape to a deserted island. Although that senior later found us, he unfortunately died. HMPH, the 10,000 Immortals Alliance is truly wicked. He just helped ordinary people return to the cultivation world, but it's labeled as a crime. They are really adept at adding insult to injury." The skull expressed extreme anger and disdain. "Kid, remember, never let the 10,000 Immortals Alliance cultivators discover the white hand bone on you. Otherwise, your life will be in danger," the skull cautioned. "Why?" Xiao Heng widened his eyes. "This involves a great being's grudges with the 10,000 Immortals Alliance." The skull sighed and then recounted a past story to Xiao Heng. A long, long time ago, a true immortal descended into the Xuanwang realm. He was compassionate and cared for all living beings. Understanding the difficulties of cultivation and the hardships of cultivating immortality, he tirelessly taught the principles of cultivation to cultivators worldwide. Many cultivators benefited from his kindness, rapidly advancing in their cultivation. The cultivation world experienced a period of great prosperity. However, when the true immortal's time in the lower realm reached its limit, and he was about to return to the immortal realm, he was attacked by a group of cultivators. These people had profound cultivation and were fearless in the face of death. They directly shattered the connection to the immortal realm, leaving the true immortal with no escape. Under the endless consumption of countless battles, the true immortal's injuries became increasingly severe. Eventually, he fell in the Xuanwang realm. Although the true immortal died, his determination did not fade. Before falling, he took one last look at the Xuanwang realm, memorizing everything. Later, the true immortal's lingering consciousness, after thousands of years of evolution, formed a vast world of consciousness. The fallen immortal realm. The cultivators who attacked the true immortal were the original 10,000 Immortals Alliance. The story contained a vast amount of information, and Xiao Heng took a while to digest it. Senior, why did the 10,000 Immortals Alliance attack the true immortal? Xiao Heng asked. Why, naturally, for the sake of profit. The true immortal descended from a higher realm with numerous immortal techniques and artifacts. Acquiring just one of them would be a great opportunity. For instance, the foundation of the 10,000 Immortals Alliance today, the Tianxuan Mirror, was once one of the true immortal's personal artifacts. It has endless marvelous uses. The skull's tone was full of resentment as it explained. Later, it introduced the wondrous aspects of the Tianxuan Mirror to Xiao Heng. Xiao Heng, who had never seen such a treasure, couldn't help but be fascinated. Afterward, he couldn't help but say, the 10,000 Immortals Alliance is truly despicable. After a while, Xiao Heng asked again, Senior, who are you, and how did you end up like this? The skull fell silent for a long time, seemingly immersed in memories. Then, it slowly said, not all cultivators are as crazy as the 10,000 Immortals Alliance back then. There are still many cultivators who, having received kindness from the true immortal, felt extremely grateful and respectful toward him. Upon hearing the news of the true immortal being attacked by the 10,000 Immortals Alliance, they were grief-stricken and vowed to avenge the true immortal. They spontaneously formed the Immortal Revival Organization and resisted the 10,000 Immortals Alliance. Unfortunately, the 10,000 Immortals Alliance was too powerful, and the Immortal Revival Organization was far from enough. After thousands of years of annihilation, the number of people in the Immortal Revival Organization grew smaller and smaller. Now, only I am left. The skull's words contained an endless aura of sadness. Xiao Heng, who had an extremely strong sense of justice, could not help but be infected by it, and his eyes reddened slightly. Senior, he wanted to speak a few comforting words, but was interrupted by the skull. Haha, an old man like me doesn't need a small child like you to pity me. Previously, I was left with only my consciousness, surviving in the cracks of the fallen immortal realm, with no one left to succeed me. But heaven didn't forsake the Immortal Revival Organization and brought you to me. A faint light shot from the skull's eye sockets, enveloping Xiao Heng. You are a rare cultivation genius seen once in a millennium. Join us and take up the banner to fight against the 10,000 Immortals Alliance. It's perfect. Saying this, Xiao Heng noticed a storage ring appearing on his hand. At the same time, numerous pieces of information instantly appeared in his mind. Most of them were common knowledge needed for cultivation, but there was even a technique called the sea-fixing sword technique. The skull retracted the faint light and slowly said, I have imparted some foundational knowledge to you, enough for you to safely cultivate to the golden core stage. But remember, you must be careful to conceal yourself and not expose your identity. The 10,000 Immortals Alliance's immortal ancestor is unfathomably powerful. After thousands of years, his strength is probably no less than that of the true immortal back then. Xiao Heng's expression became solemn. However, he awkwardly asked, Senior, I'm young and alone. It seems a bit inappropriate for me to confront the 10,000 Immortals Alliance, isn't it? The skull scolded, Nonsense. You can recruit people. If you encounter someone with good talent, you can invite them to join our Immortal Revival Organization. The Immortal Revival Organization has been dormant for thousands of years, and it's time for fresh blood to join. But make sure they are trustworthy individuals, and don't let any spies from the 10,000 Immortals Alliance infiltrate. Xiao Heng, hearing this, was pleasantly surprised. That's great. The skull continued, I've consumed too much energy in transmitting these skills to you. I'm about to fall into a deep sleep. For a while, the matters of Immortal Revival Organization will be in your hands. If there are new members, you can take them to the middle finger bone. There is an altar there, which is a special treasure of the Immortal Revival Organization. Through prayers, you can obtain techniques and items. However, the altar has a spirit and will only respond to reasonable requests. You'll know the specifics when you use it. The voice of the skull grew weaker, but it continued to provide instructions. Senior, how long will you sleep before awakening? Xiao Heng asked with concern. Hee, that's hard to say. I was already a dead man. I can survive only because of a lingering obsession. I might wake up in a year or two, or I might never wake up again. But if you're willing, in the future, when you have the ability, you can collect the foundation treasures left by cultivators after death for me. These things have lost their value to others but are helpful for my recovery. The skull spoke slowly. Xiao Heng nodded repeatedly, remembering these instructions. Remember one more thing. If you sense that my aura has completely disappeared, it means this place may have been exposed. Destroy the hand bone immediately and never come here again, the skull emphasized. All right, that's it. The skull seemed extremely weakened, unable to continue. Senior. Just as the skull was about to fall into a deep sleep, Xiao Heng hesitated for a moment and asked the lingering question in his heart. You haven't told me your name yet. You are not worthy of knowing my name at the moment. When you truly bear the heavy burden of Immortal Revival Organization, you will naturally find out. With these words, the skull dissipated into the darkness. Senior, Xiao Heng called several times, but there was no response. Regretfully sighing, he looked at the empty surroundings. Xiao Heng took out a silver necklace from his storage ring. Following the instructions of the senior, he probed it with his spiritual consciousness, and the silver necklace emitted a radiant light. Then, Xiao Heng's vision darkened, and after a moment, he found himself back inside the flying boat on the deserted island. His companions were still sleeping around, and everything that happened seemed like a dream. However, the ring on his hand and the necklace hanging on his chest reminded Xiao Heng that this was not a dream. The young Xiao Heng now bore a burden that a child of his age shouldn't bear. Feeling mentally and physically exhausted, it didn't take long for him to fall into a deep sleep. Early the next morning, he woke up earlier than everyone else. Alone, he went to the seaside, recalled the techniques taught by the senior, closed his eyes, and began sensing the spiritual energy around, quietly cultivating. After half a day, when Yi Feipeng, who couldn't find Xiao Heng's trace after waking up, sensed a spiritual energy fluctuation by the seaside, he walked over. Initially, he didn't notice anything unusual. However, as he approached, Xiao Heng suddenly opened his eyes, and a faint blue, vaguely formed water sword appeared. Hovering in front of Xiao Heng, the sword pointed directly at Yi Feipeng, ready to launch a lethal attack. Yi Feipeng was instantly horrified, stumbling and falling to the ground. Pointing at Xiao Heng with his finger, his body trembling, he couldn't utter a word. Chapter 211. The Swimming Dragon Arises from Kanghai. What's going on? What's going on? Seeing Xiao Heng in this state, Yi Feipeng was truly shocked. Having experienced a rebirth, he naturally understood that this water sword could only be condensed after practicing a certain cultivation technique. But how was that possible? This kid had just entered the cultivation world and knew nothing. How could he have mastered a technique overnight? Could it be that he had been possessed? Such thoughts involuntarily crossed Yi Feipeng's mind. Looking at Xiao Heng, whose temperament had changed greatly, Yi Feipeng became more and more convinced. With an unpleasant smile, Yi Feipeng struggled to get up and tried to escape back to the flying boat. Fatty, why are you running? Xiao Heng, who had awakened from cultivation, saw Yi Feipeng's embarrassed figure and couldn't help but find it strange, shouting loudly. Hearing the familiar tone, Yi Feipeng couldn't help but stop in his tracks. He turned around and looked at Xiao Heng suspiciously. You haven't been possessed. Xiao Heng replied impatiently, you're the one who has been possessed. How do you know what possession is? How do you know what possession is? Both of them spoke at the same time, pointing at each other. What secret do you have on you? What secret do you have on you? The two confronted each other with cold faces, and in the end, Yi Feipeng, who was much weaker in strength, yielded first. HMPH, I'll go first. It's not a big deal, but you have to keep it secret for me. Yi Feipeng looked at Xiao Heng, raising his voice. Fine, Xiao Heng nodded in agreement. It's not some earth-shattering secret. Have you heard of innate knowledge? Yi Feipeng looked at Xiao Heng with a sidelong glance. When I was born, my mind naturally contained a lot of knowledge. However, when I was younger, I couldn't figure out what those things were. But as I grew older, I finally understood that those were various knowledge related to cultivation. Now I've said it, tell me quickly, what happened to you overnight? How did you change so much? Yi Feipeng spoke rapidly, asking urgently. It turns out you're not a spy from the 10,000 Immortals Alliance. Xiao Heng breathed a sigh of relief. However, he didn't completely believe it. Guard your heart against others. The senior said that our Immortal Revival organization is currently in decline, and many of our means have been lost. Using this contract borrowed from the Five Elders Association ensures our safe development. It's not shameful. Thinking this way, he took out a golden contract from his storage ring and handed it over. Soul contract, where did this kid get this thing? I remember this isn't cheap. Yi Feipeng was suspicious, taking the soul contract and examining it carefully. I voluntarily join Immortal Revival Organization. I will not disclose any information about this organization to outsiders. I will not harm any members of this organization. Quote. This was a one-sided soul contract, but the restrictions were not too strict. After reading it carefully, Yi Feipeng pondered for a moment, then wrote his name on it. Feeling the golden light entering his body, Yi Feipeng said, how about it? Can you tell me now? Xiao Heng was very happy. The second day after Immortal Revival Organization reappeared in the world, a new member was added. Senior said that if we encounter companions with good talent, we can recruit them into Immortal Revival Organization. Fatty was born with innate knowledge and should have decent talent. So, he narrated the encounters of the night in detail. After listening, Yi Feipeng's first reaction was disbelief. What's Immortal Revival Organization? I've never heard of it. Joining the organization comes with free cultivation techniques. How is that even possible? Are you being deceived? Yi Feipeng couldn't help but ask. Xiao Heng gave Yi Feipeng a disdainful look. We just entered the cultivation world, penniless, with nothing valuable on us. What is there to deceive us for? If you don't believe it, come with me. Xiao Heng took out a necklace and then retrieved the white bone hand from his storage ring. He gently broke the index finger. Handing both the necklace and the bone finger to Yi Feipeng, Xiao Heng said, wear the bone finger on you and activate the formation in the necklace. Yi Feipeng, still skeptical, followed Xiao Heng's instructions. After a moment, the surroundings underwent a transformation. Yi Feipeng's consciousness also entered the white bone realm. With 5 fingers pointing to the sky and the vast ancient scenery, Yi Feipeng, a reborn cultivator with a qi condensation stage cultivation in his previous life, felt great shock in his heart. How about it? I wasn't lying to you, right? Xiao Heng said somewhat smugly. The fall of a true immortal, a single thought births a world. Both illusory and real. Yi Feipeng pinched himself, and the shock in his heart lingered like endless waves. Suddenly, he seemed to remember something and sprinted towards the central bone of this hidden realm. Slow down, you can't fly yet, be careful not to fall. Xiao Heng saw the situation and quickly shouted. Stupid, this is obviously a consciousness space. Falling down won't kill me. Yi Feipeng thought to himself. He ignored Xiao Heng and crawled along the slanting bone finger. Soon, he arrived at the tip of the bone finger. A quaint altar stood prominently. If what this kid said is true. Cultivation techniques, I want cultivation techniques. Yi Feipeng earnestly prayed. The altar remained unresponsive for a while. At this point, Xiao Heng had finally climbed up slowly. It's useless to do it like this. If you want something, just shout it out loud. Xiao Heng, seeing his appearance, quickly explained. Why didn't you say it earlier? This little brat, if I could beat you, I would have beaten you up long ago. Yi Feipeng felt aggrieved in his heart. But with the cultivation technique in front of him, he temporarily didn't want to argue with him. Standing in the center of the altar, Yi Feipeng shouted loudly, cultivation technique. I want a cultivation technique. It seemed that the altar heard Yi Feipeng's voice, and a bright white light suddenly emitted from the altar. Then the light dimmed. Yi Feipeng's heartbeat also suddenly stopped. Time seemed to pause. It felt like just a moment, yet also like a long time had passed. In the center of the altar, a faint white light suddenly appeared. After a moment, the light dispersed. A jade slip quietly floated in the air. Yi Feipeng eagerly picked up the jade slip and carefully read its contents. Kanghai Swimming Dragon Technique, Foundation Establishment Cultivation Technique. It's actually a foundation establishment cultivation technique. Yi Feipeng's voice trembled, and his eyes turned red. In his previous life, he worked hard for many years but couldn't accumulate enough contribution points to buy a foundation establishment cultivation technique. Who would have thought that in this life, it would be given for free? Good, good. Yi Feipeng, who understood the value of cultivation techniques, was now so excited that he couldn't speak. In his mind, there was only one thought. Let the 10,000 Immortals Alliance go to hell. With this mysterious and unpredictable organization providing cultivation techniques for free. Plus my foresight, in this world, there's hope for Dao integration. Chapter 212, Ripples in the World. In the White Bone Realm, Li Fan, who held the highest authority, looked at the excited Yi Feipeng and the equally happy Xiao Heng, nodding secretly. After playing with these kids for so long, the groundwork has been laid. In the future, unless something unexpected happens, I can sit back and enjoy the returns on my investment without having to bother with anything. To make his fabricated lies look as real as possible, Li Fan spared no effort and spent a considerable amount of resources. This included but was not limited to a necklace that integrated communication formations and ritual formations, a transmission formation disguised as an altar, a foundation establishment puppet, an illusion stone that faked the signs of a cultivator's fall, and so on. The reason for such meticulous planning in this world, including leasing and transforming the pre-expedition realm and fabricating non-existent stories of ancient immortal experiences, was because of Li Fan's considerations. Firstly, if he directly supported them with cultivation techniques as a cultivator, it would be fine at the beginning when these prodigies were still young and naive. However, as they grew older and realized the preciousness of cultivation techniques, suspicions and doubts might arise, and they might question if there were hidden costs or a conspiracy behind the scenes. Once doubt crept in, it could lead to numerous complications. By disguising the gift of cultivation techniques as the natural encounters of these prodigies, the worry of hidden motives could be avoided. Secondly, after establishing the organization known as the Immortal Revival Organization, he could comfortably play the role of a detached investor. He no longer needed to tirelessly search for exceptionally talented individuals to invest in personally. Talents attracted each other. During the journey and adventures of prodigies like Xiao Heng and Su Xiaomei, they were likely to encounter companions with outstanding talents. Without Li Fan's intervention, the number of members of the Immortal Revival Organization would naturally increase. He could let these prodigies grow freely, focus on his own cultivation, and enjoy the returns from the expansion of the Immortal Revival Organization. Thirdly, the background of the Immortal Revival Organization's grudge against the 10,000 Immortals Alliance would naturally add a layer of pressure on Xiao Heng and others. Pressure provides motivation, allowing them to squeeze out their full potential in cultivation, and Li Fan could recover his investment more quickly. Li Fan clearly remembered that in the previous life, Xiao Heng took more than 10 years to eliminate the miasma within his body due to a lack of pressure. However, in this life, under the pressure of being stranded on a deserted island and carrying the burden of revenge, Xiao Heng spontaneously began cultivation the day after obtaining the sea-fixing sword technique. The difference between the two scenarios was significant. As for the small, Immortal Revival Organization, and whether it would attract the attention of the 10,000 Immortals Alliance. When Li Fan disguised himself as a skull, he had already explained to Xiao Heng that the 10,000 Immortals Alliance was powerful, and the organization's main focus was on developing and strengthening its own forces. Before reaching the nascent soul realm, it was advisable not to directly confront the 10,000 Immortals Alliance. Even if Xiao Heng was a genius, it would take several years for him to reach the nascent soul stage. Li Fan might not even live long enough to witness it. In summary, the seeds had been planted. Now, all that was left was to patiently wait for the prodigies of Immortal Revival Organization to grow, and then Li Fan could reap the rewards. After being busy for a total of 2 months, Li Fan returned to the 10,000 Immortals Island. The 10th year after the anchor point had arrived. Although the mountain meditation technique allowed him to passively receive benefits, Li Fan was not the type to rely entirely on others for everything. He didn't neglect his own cultivation. Throughout the 10th year, Li Fan diligently spent his time in seclusion. The Tianquan mirror's enlightenment didn't stop for a moment. This 1 year was equivalent to 20 years of ordinary cultivation. Then, on a certain day, a substantial feedback of cultivation suddenly appeared in Li Fan's dantian, awakening him from his cultivation. The amount of cultivation feedback was equivalent to 3 or 4 years of his usual efforts. Unexpectedly, the first substantial feedback came not from the prodigies in the separated world but from He Zhenghao. Just now, he had successfully advanced from the mid-foundation establishment to the late foundation establishment stage. Fellow Taoist, he has accumulated quite a bit and has broken through so quickly. It seems that his statement about achieving the golden core stage within 50 years wasn't an empty boast. At this moment, Li Fan also received the good news sent by He Zhenghao. Li Fan waived the interest He Zhenghao owed him this year as encouragement, urging him to continue working hard and strive for golden core as soon as possible. Then, he checked the messages he missed during the closed-door cultivation. Zhang Ziliang's research on the mountain and river formation was nearing completion. He sent a message, inquiring about Li Fan's self-study progress in the formation Dao. Upon his return, there would be an assessment of Li Fan's proficiency. This, naturally, did not worry Li Fan, who had previously studied formations under Zhang Ziliang for more than 10 years in his previous life. Among the other unimportant greeting messages, one from Zhang Zhengji of the Martial Hall caught Li Fan's interest. He asked if Li Fan had recently seen a foundation establishment cultivator. It seemed like a mass message, but Li Fan recognized the foundation establishment cultivator Zhang Zhengji was referring to. It was the foundation establishment Grand Master who had been smuggled in from a land of immortal extinction. Li Fan inquired further from Zhang Zhengji and learned what had happened. Recently, this foundation establishment Grand Master, who had been relatively low-key, suddenly intensified his promotional efforts. With slogans like guaranteed success in foundation establishment and a 90% reduction in the time needed, he attracted many late-stage qi condensation cultivators who were preparing for foundation establishment. They still had considerable trust in this foundation establishment Grand Master. After contributing their points, they began to cultivate on the spot under the careful guidance of the Master. However, when they woke up from the foundation establishment process, whether successful or not, they angrily discovered that the foundation establishment Grand Master, who had been guiding them all along, was actually just an illusion. The real foundation establishment Grand Master had long since vanished. The cultivators realized they had been deceived. According to later statistics, at least more than 100 cultivators had gathered on the island at that time. 2,000 contribution points were not a small amount, even for a late-stage qi condensation cultivator. Feeling disgruntled and disregarding their pride, they chose to report to the 10,000 Immortals Alliance. The 10,000 Immortals Alliance didn't take such a small matter seriously, but they still had to perform their due diligence. Therefore, the Martial Hall ordered Zhang Zhengji to thoroughly investigate the case. When Zhang Zhengji arrived at the scene to investigate, it was already empty, and he couldn't find anything. Moreover, these people seemed quite skillful. Even when Zhang Zhengji sought the help of the Heavenly Secrets Hall's elder Gongsun to deduce their whereabouts, he couldn't find a trace. If a mission couldn't be completed, merits would be deducted, and permission levels would be reduced. Helplessly, Zhang Zhengji had to try his luck and sent a mass message to his friends, asking if anyone had seen the trace of the foundation establishment Grand Master. After understanding the ins and outs of the matter, Li Fan, with interest, stroked his chin. According to the normal trajectory, they should have been quietly running a scam, accumulating contribution points slowly. Why would they go for something big and then just run away? Could it be that they also speculated on spirit mist grass? Li Fan couldn't help but think of this possibility. Thinking about it, there was indeed a certain possibility. After all, during the 12th life, they were not far from exchanging for the sea-swallowing eternal life technique. Taking a risk might allow them to complete the mission 50 years ahead of schedule. Li Fan could even imagine that when spirit mist grass initially surged, they might have been tempted, but their opinions on using decades of savings to speculate might not have been unanimous. However, as the price of spirit mist grass continued to rise, opposing opinions would weaken. Finally, after hesitating and finally agreeing to enter, intending to make a profit and leave at an opportune time, the Tianxuan mirror caused a stir, and the price of spirit mist grass collapsed. They were left empty-handed. Perhaps they didn't use all their savings, but the losses were definitely heavy. That's why they took the risk, planning to make a quick profit and run. 100 people, that's 200,000 contribution points. This scam is far faster than investing. After some thought, Li Fan replied to Zhang Zhengji, if possible, friend, you can search along the way towards Yongliang province. There might be results. After a while, Zhang Zhengji replied, fellow Taoist, do you mean they went to seek refuge with the Five Elders Association? HMPH, betraying the alliance is a grave crime. If I catch them, Regardless, thank you, fellow Taoist. Li Fan politely said a few more words and put away the communication token, pondering quietly. He wasn't particularly concerned about the Foundation establishment Grandmaster's early escape. What Li Fan was really concerned about was that the impact of the Spirit Mist Grass incident seemed to exceed his expectations. He had vaguely felt that he had missed something previously. Now, after this incident, Li Fan finally understood what he had overlooked. Li Fan searched for the prices of spiritual plants and herbs in the Tianquan mirror. As expected, there was an aura of despair everywhere, and the situation was unbearable. Many even fell below their cost of production. In the 12th life, the collapse of prices was caused by the first batch of mature spiritual plants from the wood attribute subworld being sold on a large scale in the 13th year. But in this life, due to the announcement of the Tianquan mirror, all the cultivators of the 10,000 Immortals Alliance know in advance about the abundant spiritual plants in that subworld. The price drop was foreseeable. In order to sell the herbs in their hands quickly, cultivators squeezed each other, leading to the early collapse of spiritual plant prices. However, that's not the main point. The main point is the minor medicine king cauldrons. Recalling the culprit that had once caused his demise, a glint of light flashed in Li Fan's eyes. The collapse of herb prices naturally means that no one will buy the small cauldron used for planting herbs. No one will commission Zhao Shuyuan. Will he still go to the Medicine King sect's ruins to dig out the minor Medicine King cauldrons? At this point, the minor Medicine King cauldron is worthless. However, once the real Medicine King's cauldron returns, it will become a treasure that everyone competes for. Chapter 213, Tai Yan Transmutation Dao Stone. Moreover, the number of minor Medicine King cauldrons seems to be more than just 2. If my strength is insufficient, the minor Medicine King cauldron is not a stroke of luck, it's more like a death sentence. But it would be a waste to leave such a treasure to rot away underground until it is picked up by someone else. Perhaps, using this as a means, I can stir up some trouble. If I can also figure out the secret behind the returning Medicine King cauldron, that would be even better. Li Fan's thoughts surged. But before that, let's have Zhao Shuyuan take action and dig up the minor Medicine King cauldron. Speaking of which, how much did Zhao Shuyuan lose? Why hasn't he replied to me yet? The 1,000-mile hall still hasn't opened for business. Li Fan felt a bit helpless and had to use his clone to send another message to Zhao Shuyuan. Unexpectedly, this time Zhao Shuyuan replied quickly, his tone somewhat innocent. What? I didn't reply to you. How is that possible? I recovered from my injuries a long time ago. But there's a small problem, and the 1,000-mile hall won't be able to open for business temporarily. Li Fan was a bit speechless. Take a look at your message history yourself. After a moment, Zhao Shuyuan quickly apologized. My mistake. I really didn't notice, but you can't blame me. Right now, I have 1,000 things on my mind, 1,000 things. Li Fan jokingly said, I thought you lost too much and just ran away. Hee, friend, you're joking. Business is my Tao, how could I easily give up? But the situation is special now. With my current strength, manipulating thousands of puppets is a bit challenging. To avoid making poor business decisions and causing even greater losses, I had to temporarily close some less important shops. Zhao Shuyuan's words were somewhat intermittent as if he was stuttering. Li Fan couldn't help but ask, could it be that there's a problem with your cultivation technique? I wonder if you can share. Hee, there's nothing to hide. Fellow Taoist, you are my partner, and last time, because of me, you lost a lot of money. I feel a bit guilty. Zhao Shuyuan was quite polite. You know that the cultivation technique I practice is called the 10,000 Puppets Tao. I can control thousands of puppets to purchase goods, collect information, and negotiate business deals, reducing the cost of running 1,000-mile haul to the extreme. But a person's mental capacity has limits. Handling 2 or 3 things at once is barely manageable. However, wanting to flexibly control tens of thousands of puppets is beyond my capabilities. Zhao Shuyuan spoke slowly and paused. Li Fan interjected, so, how did you ensure that so many puppets operated normally before? I did indeed split my mind to operate them, but not through a cultivation technique, it was by using an ancient technique. Zhao Shuyuan explained with some pride. Back then, to find this ancient technique, I scoured through half of the cultivation world. An ancient technique? Li Fan's eyes narrowed, and he couldn't help but ask. Seeing that Li Fan seemed to be very interested in this, Zhao Shuyuan directly asked, do you know the ancient Tai Yan sect? Tai Yan sect? Li Fan was slightly stunned and couldn't help but think of the tomb of Yi Xing buried underground in Grand Zan. Yi Xing was an outer disciple of the Taiyan sect. He also pretended to be a descendant of the Taiyan sect in front of Ko Hong and Dao Xuanzi, deceiving them into helping him repair the Taiyan boat. Unexpectedly, the multitasking technique he sought was related to the Taiyan sect all along. Seeing Li Fan hesitate and not reply, Zhao Shuyuan thought Li Fan might not be familiar with it, so he briefly introduced, this Taiyan sect, in the ancient times, was renowned for its divination and calculation techniques. Their sect's foundational cultivation technique, 9 scrolls of divination, is extraordinarily profound and powerful. When cultivated to perfection, it's said to be able to predict everything and everyone in the world 1,000 years into the future. Hehe. Of course, my ancient technique has nothing to do with this, 9 volumes of divination. Zhao Shuyuan's words suddenly took a turn, and Li Fan's breath paused. But this ancient technique is something that every disciple of Taiyan sect must learn. Zhao Shuyuan explained. Oh, fellow Taoist, think about it. In this world, everyone and everything is constantly influencing each other. One change leads to 100 changes, 100 changes lead to 10,000 changes. The world is so vast. The number of variables is truly unimaginable. Even for a Tao integration cultivator, it's impossible to systematically comprehend all these variables. And the number of variables grasped is closely related to the accuracy of deductions. So, every disciple of Taiyan sect spends their entire life aspiring to improve their ability to master variables. Zhao Shuyuan spoke eloquently. This ability, in simple terms, is a cultivator's calculation ability. Some extraordinarily talented cultivators have exceptional calculation skills. Despite the complexity, in their eyes, all variables in each of their interactions are orderly and crystal clear. But such cultivators are very rare. Even in the ancient Taiyan sect, they were extremely scarce. So how did ordinary disciples of Taiyan sect enhance their calculation abilities? Zhao Shuyuan paused. Li Fan cooperatively asked, is this where your ancient technique comes in? Exactly. Zhao Shuyuan excitedly revealed the mystery. If you are not born with this ability yourself, you might as well use external assistance. This technique is called the Divine Transformation Tao. In ancient times, within Taiyan sect, there was a treasure called the Tao Transformation Stone. Light flows on the surface of the Tao Transformation Stone, and there seem to be countless worlds appearing and disappearing within this light. But in reality, the birth and destruction of these worlds are not just illusions. Instead, they are the results spontaneously deduced and calculated by the Tao Transformation Stone. Although temporary, they are not false. This Divine Transformation Tao technique involves using a secret method to merge one's consciousness with the Tao Transformation Stone. By doing so, one can utilize the terrifying calculation abilities of the Tao Transformation Stone to peer into fate and explore causality. Zhao Shuyuan's tone became more fluent. In ancient times, almost every Taiyan sect disciple had a Tao Transformation Stone. They were separated from the largest one called the Mother Tao Transformation Stone. The higher the quality of the Tao Transformation Stone, the stronger its calculation abilities. The reason I could easily control these thousands of puppets before was because of the Tao Transformation Stone and the Divine Transformation Tao. And now, the small trouble I encountered is also related to the Tao Transformation Stone. The price collapse of Lingwu grass last time caused me significant losses. With thousands of puppets simultaneously under extreme mental duress, my lower quality Tao Transformation Stone couldn't withstand the pressure and directly cracked, losing its calculation function. Zhao Shuyuan mentioned the sad past, sighing. To smoothly control these thousands of puppets again, I need to find a new Tao Transformation Stone. It's a rare item and highly sought after. When the Great Calamity came, Taiyan sect perished, and the Mother Tao Transformation Stone disappeared without a trace. Now, after so long, trying to find a new Tao Transformation Stone is like searching for a needle in a haystack. But recently, I've got some information. If everything goes well, I believe I won't be far from resuming operations. Zhao Shuyuan's tone became enthusiastic again. The Tao Transformation Stone, Divine Transformation Tao. Li Fan pondered for a moment and then asked tentatively, Taiyan sect has been destroyed for thousands of years. Why does it seem like you know so much about various secrets of the Taiyan sect? Could it be that you are a descendant of the Taiyan sect? Fellow Taoist, don't joke. I am certainly not a descendant of Taiyan sect. The reason I know these secrets is that I happened to dig up the grave of a Tai Yan sect disciple. Upon hearing this, Li Fan fell silent. The two of them fell into an eerie silence for a while. Haha, fellow Taoist, don't misunderstand. Digging graves is just something I occasionally do. The source of my goods at 1,000 Mile Hall is clean, and only a small portion comes from graves. Hee, fellow Taoist, rest assured. I'm not very scrupulous about this matter. My belief is that regardless of the origin, as long as it's useful, it's fine, Li Fan said. Tisk tisk, what you said is in line with my beliefs, fellow Taoist. Zhao Shuyuan became excited again. Li Fan recalled his original intention of contacting Zhao Shuyuan and continued, speaking of this, I have a matter that I'd like to ask for your help, fellow Taoist. Zhao Shuyuan immediately said, fellow Taoist, feel free to speak. If it's within my ability, I will definitely help. Fellow Taoist, you should be familiar with the ancient Medicine King sect, right? Today, when I was researching ancient texts, I found that the disciples of the Medicine King sect used a kind of small cauldron to cultivate various spiritual plants and herbs. This small cauldron has its own space and can generate would attribute spiritual energy, accelerating the growth of herbs. I happen to need this kind of small cauldron to cultivate a rare herb. But it seems that the ruins of the Medicine King sect are quite dangerous, so I would like to trouble fellow Taoists to go there and find these cauldrons for me. Of course, the reward will definitely not be lacking. Although we are like-minded and get along well, business is business, and we can't be lax, Li Fan smiled and said slowly. Zhao Shuyuan agreed enthusiastically, fellow Taoist, you said it well. Business is business. Just because of your words, consider this task already accepted. Small cauldrons, right, these are not particularly cherished items and should not be difficult to find. Fellow Taoist, just wait for my good news. In that case, I'll trouble fellow Taoist Zhao, Li Fan thanked in advance. After exchanging a few more pleasantries, without mentioning the Tao Transformation Stone and the Divine Transformation Tao, Li Fan ended the conversation. The tomb of a Tai Yan sect disciple, Tao Transformation Stone. In the Tianquan mirror, scenes of when he was still an ordinary official leading a group to explore Yi Xing's tomb flashed in Li Fan's mind. At that time, as a mortal, I didn't pay much attention. Now that I think about it, it seems that there was another world inside Yi Xing's tomb. The spiritual energy in the land of immortal extinction was severed, but inside that tomb, there were mountains and a sea of clouds that had not dissipated for thousands of years. Obviously, it was not a mortal mechanism, it should be some kind of formation. Li Fan suddenly stood up. If that's the case, I'll go back to Grand Zon. Chapter 214, The Reverse Calamity Heaven Locked Treasure Box. Grand Zon. According to the location in his memory, Li Fan returned to Yi Xing's tomb and easily broke the mechanism guarding the tomb without much effort. He casually set up a formation to prevent others from accidentally intruding. After many years, Li Fan entered Yi Xing's tomb once again. Through the long tomb passage, he arrived at the deep part of the tomb. Above his head, pearls sparkled like stars, and beneath his feet, a sea of clouds spread out over towering peaks. At a glance, he could see traces of a formation. This formation can actually endure for thousands of years in the absence of spiritual energy. Li Fan couldn't help but be amazed and carefully examined it. Before long, he understood the reason. Using pearls as stars. Using the soil from various famous mountains in Grand Zon as peaks. Substituting reality for illusion, minimizing the consumption of the formation to the greatest extent. And this unknown formation completely abandons functions like attack and defense. Its only purpose is illusion. In Li Fan's perception, the source of spiritual energy supporting the operation of the formation was the grass hut woven from golden threads where Yi Xing's spiritual position was located. Li Fa flew to the mountaintop, found the node of the formation, and stepped on it. Break. The peaks shattered like bubbles, dissipating instantly. A black hole appeared beneath the golden threaded grass hut. Li Fa followed this newly revealed passage and arrived beneath the illusion formation. Here lay Yi Xing's true tomb. The tomb was decorated like an ordinary study. In front of a vermilion table lay a skeleton. Beside it, a dim candle flame still flickered weakly. On the table, around the skeleton, and even on the floor of the entire study, there were scattered papers covered in mysterious symbols. Li Fan picked up one and looked at it for a while, but couldn't decipher what Yi Xing had written during his lifetime. He casually collected all these papers and searched for a while. To Li Fan's disappointment, he didn't find the Tao Transformation Stone. Apart from Yi Xing's skeleton and the papers scattered throughout the room, there was nothing else. Could it be that this still isn't the real tomb? Although Yi Xing was just an outer disciple, he was once responsible for the migration of ordinary people. His status shouldn't be too low. It shouldn't be so shabby. Li Fan, unwilling to give up, carefully searched the place inside and out once again. But the result remained unchanged. After pondering for a moment, he collected the table, the candle on the table, and Yi Xing's skeleton in one go. To avoid overlooking anything, Li Fan simply activated the Kong Yun sword and thoroughly destroyed the entire room with brute force. The vast power of the Kong Yun sword exposed the geological structure around the study. To Li Fan's disappointment, this was indeed the bottommost layer of the tomb. Going further down, there was only rock and soil. It seems that the trip was in vain. Li Fan shook his head helplessly. He came full of expectations but returned defeated. After returning to the Xuanwang realm, Li Fan cremated Yi Xing's bones and scattered them to the wind. He then returned to the Tianquan mirror. If there is anything left behind, it should be among the remaining 3 items. After pondering for a moment, Li Fan, under the pretext of selling assets, handed over the table, the candle, and one of the papers to the Tianquan mirror for identification. The first 2 were ordinary items. The silver fir mahogany table and a whale oil long-lasting candle added up to only 30 contribution points. But the papers covered in strange symbols were not ordinary paper. Heaven-locked treasure box incomplete, 1 contribution point. Li Fan's eyes flashed. Indeed, there really is something else. Instead of choosing to sell it, Li Fan searched for information about the heaven-locked treasure box. As the name suggests, the heaven-locked treasure box is a storage box sealed in a special way. Only by completing the decryption set by the owner can the storage box be opened. But even after knowing that there was a secret inside, Li Fan was at a loss when faced with the tens of thousands of papers full of strange symbols. Fortunately, Li Fan was not alone. The Immortal Alliance is undoubtedly vast, and someone must know. As usual, Li Fan started searching for keywords in the Tianquan mirror. After excluding countless unrelated pieces of information one by one, Li Fan searched for a long time and finally found a clue in an article introducing various activities ancient cultivators engaged in during their leisure time. Reverse calamity. Li Fan's spirit shook, and he began to read carefully. The article explained that in ancient times, some cultivators believed that the world developed from order to disorder. From the initial, origin, to the duality of yin and yang, to the 5 elements of heaven and earth, and finally to all things in the world. Order was lost, and chaos accumulated. Eventually, chaos would completely overwhelm order, destroying everything and returning the heavens and earth to chaos. This is the calamity. And a reverse calamity game is a game that requires reversing chaos into order. This game requires high demands on a cultivator's spiritual awareness and computational abilities. It was popular among sects specializing in formations and divination. It sounds complicated but is actually easy to understand. Taking the tens of thousands of papers Li Fan found in Yi Xing's tomb as an example, these papers originally had a fixed order. All Li Fan had to do was to rearrange these papers that had been chaotically shuffled and restore them to their original order. It should be simple. Thinking so, Li Fan took out all the papers from his storage ring, ready to give it a try. But immediately, he realized that something was wrong, and his face turned black. It was anything but simple. There are a total of. With a sweep of his spiritual awareness, Li Fan's expression became increasingly unsightly. 49,999 papers. If there are no other clues, and I simply attempt each possibility. Just thinking about it, Li Fan felt dizzy. Even if I do nothing else in my life, I won't be able to crack it. Li Fan picked up one paper and observed the content written on it. The seemingly meaningless symbols on this paper should be clues. Unfortunately, it's equivalent to a predetermined encryption key, only known to the person involved. Perhaps it was a common code among the disciples of the Tai Yan sect back in the day. Unable to discern anything, Li Fan felt somewhat helpless. I wonder if the Tao transformation stone that Zhao Shuyuan found at that time was also encrypted like this. Li Fan couldn't help but think about asking for help with a clone. However, right after that, he had a flash of insight and temporarily gave up on the idea. Quote, "It's just a password with more digits. I can't do it, but this one surely can." Li Fan cleared his throat, smiled, and asked the Tianquan mirror if it provides decryption services. The Tianquan mirror remained silent for a moment and then gave an affirmative answer. However, the cost would be charged according to the difficulty of decryption. After inquiring, Li Fan learned that it would be at most 20 to 30,000 contribution points. With his ample resources, Li Fan boldly entrusted the Tianshuan mirror to proceed with the decryption. Even if he knew there was a secret inside, faced with tens of thousands of papers covered in strange symbols, Li Fan was at a loss. Chapter 215, Life's End. A faint light swept through, and the over 40,000 sheets of paper floated in the air in an instant. Inside the Tianshuan mirror, Li Fan felt that these papers before him seemed to move slightly. After a moment, a thick book appeared in front of Li Fan. Decryption complete, required contribution points deducted, 28,000 points. So fast, Li Fan couldn't help but marvel. Just now, the scene of the pages flying was definitely not an illusion. It moved at a speed beyond Li Fan's perception limit, making it impossible to see the trajectory of the paper's movement. Times have changed. Yi Xing, in the past, without knowing the key, would be impossible for ordinary cultivators to open the heaven-locked treasure box you left behind. But now, everyone can use the Tianshuan mirror. This encrypted treasure box is defenseless in front of the Tianshuan mirror. The Tianshuan mirror is indeed a treasure. Li Fan sighed inwardly and opened the heaven-locked treasure box that was no longer restricted. Inside were only two things: a jade slip and a crystal stone emitting a deep blue light. The blue light, like breathing, flickered gently. Looking closely, countless scenes seemed to unfold inside the stone. This is the Dao Transformation Stone. Although it took some twists and turns, Li Fan joyfully took the Dao Transformation Stone into his hands. I wonder what quality the Dao Transformation Stone left by Yi Xing is. Once again, he had the Tianshuan mirror act as the appraiser. Dao Transformation Stone, low grade, can be converted to 150,000 contribution points. The Tianshuan mirror, ever reliable, quickly displayed the result. Li Fan decisively chose to reject the sale and pondered in his heart. Although it's low grade, it should be enough for me at the moment. This small piece of stone is actually more valuable than a nascent soul cultivation technique. No, Zhao Shuyuan said that this Dao Transformation Stone is basically priceless. 150,000 is just the theoretical purchase price of the Tianshuan mirror. Trying to buy it at the same price is simply wishful thinking. Li Fan searched within the Tianshuan mirror. As expected, many cultivators posted messages seeking to buy Dao Transformation Stones. The proposed trade conditions were not just contribution points, but also various rare treasures of equal value. This can be considered the most valuable thing I own at the moment. Li Fan happily stored the Dao Transformation Stone and began to read the jade slip left by Yi Xing. The jade slip didn't contain any profound techniques. It was mostly Yi Xing's musings and reflections before his death. From his words, Li Fan also learned a lot about Yi Xing's life as a disciple of the Taiyan sect during the Great Migration era many years ago. At that time, under the influence of the rule that cultivation techniques couldn't be practiced together, there were extremely brutal incidents of fratricide in many sects within the cultivation world. Some thousand-year-old immortal sects even perished overnight because of this. The Taiyan sect was no exception. However, most Taiyan sect disciples preferred the arts of divination and calculation and were not keen on fighting and killing. Internal conflicts were quickly suppressed by the Taiyan sect master, Zhuo Chushang. Although this kind of peace was destined not to last, it still maintained for a while. Just as this short-lived peace was about to disappear, the immortal miasma erupted. The restriction of not practicing different cultivation techniques only meant that cultivation realms stagnated. But being infected by the immortal miasma meant certain death. Everyone in the cultivation world knew which was more serious. So, they no longer cared about internal conflicts. Instead, they turned their heads to deal with the immortal miasma. The history during this period was consistent with what Li Fan knew before. First, there was a rampant slaughter of mortals, and then, after noticing that something was wrong, the urgent slaughter of mortals was promptly stopped. Following that was the notorious Great Migration Plan. All people below the Qi condensation stage had to be forcibly moved to nearby subworlds and pocket dimensions. At that time, Yi Xing was already in the later stage of Qi condensation. However, he volunteered to be in charge of the migration of mortals for the Taiyan sect and the surrounding areas. In his musings, Yi Xing admitted that although the outbreak of the immortal miasma forcibly halted the process of cultivators killing each other, it was foreseeable that a true era of slaughter and darkness would come soon. At that time, as a mere chi condensation cultivator, he would definitely be one of the first to be slaughtered. So, he might as well take advantage of this opportunity to escape with mortals to nearby small worlds. With the prestige of an immortal, he could command the masses and create a foundation in this small world. Then, he could discard his cultivation technique to ensure peace. Perhaps, he could live longer than staying forcibly in the cultivation world. So, in this desolate little world, Yi Xing established a mortal dynasty. Knowing that his chances of immortality were slim, Yi Xing, upon becoming emperor, mobilized the people to build a tomb for himself. Moreover, while his cultivation was still intact, he set up an illusion array inside the tomb, concealing his true burial site. As time passed, the spiritual energy within his body completely disappeared, turning him into an ordinary mortal. He began to reminisce about his days in the Taiyan sect. When Yi Xing was about to die of old age, he came alone to his tomb, sealing the burial chamber. Then he stored the Tao transformation stone, hoping that in the future, a disciple of the Taiyan sect might accidentally come to this realm and take the Tao transformation stone back to the sect. I didn't expect Yi Xing to have such a past. This person is quite wise, making the right choice. He withdrew in time and successfully escaped the Dark Age. However, there were probably quite a few cultivators who chose to escape back then. The capable, like Medicine King sect's Lu Rushan, directly tore through the void and escaped the Xuanwang realm. Those like Yi Xing settled for second best and fled to nearby small worlds. Li Fan also recalled the farce of the small worlds counter-attacking the cultivation world that He Zhenghao mentioned, which happened 500 years ago. Perhaps, there are some influences left by the escaping cultivators from that time. After indulging in his thoughts for a moment, Li Fan put away the jade slip and slowly retracted his scattered thoughts. The Tao transformation stone is in hand, but how should I use it? Yi Xing didn't leave behind the secrets of divine transformation Tao. Out of cautiousness, Li Fan didn't ask Zhao Shuyuan and instead continued searching in the Tianquan mirror. As expected, although it was an ancient technique, the key to this technique was the Tao transformation stone, not the technique itself. Without the Tao transformation stone, the divine transformation Tao was completely useless. Furthermore, the methods of using the Tao transformation stone had developed over the years in the cultivation world, and were not limited to just the divine transformation Tao. Moreover, with no restrictions on multiple practitioners of these techniques, the price naturally wasn't that high. Li Fan spent only 30,000 contribution points, equivalent to the price of a golden core technique. After signing a confidentiality contract, he learned the technique. Witness the divine, merge with calculation, unite with objects, and embody the divine transformation Tao. Li Fan placed the deep blue Tao transformation stone on his forehead. Activating the technique, he slowly began cultivating. The fusion of spiritual consciousness and the Tao transformation stone was a slow process. Time passed quietly as Li Fan practiced the technique. In the blink of an eye, it was the 11th year, the time for the opening of the Cloudwater Heavenly Palace. Although Li Fan was now wealthy, he didn't want to waste the 100,000 contribution points of the Cloudwater map task. So, Li Fan used his clone to visit the Cloudwater Heavenly Palace. First, he faced Qin Tang's test. However, the main body's will was inevitably distracted by cultivation, making it not as perfect as when Li Fan dealt with it wholeheartedly. But relying on a pot of good wine, he managed to turn the tide. Again, among the test takers, he ranked first. This time, Qin Tang didn't teach the Cloudwater illusory dream art. Instead, he imparted a golden core level cultivation technique called Kanghai wave treading. Although Li Fan was a bit regretful, there was nothing he could do. This clone only had chi condensation cultivation, so obtaining a golden core technique was already quite generous of Qin Tang. After chatting with Qin Tang for a while, he freed himself from the illusion. Avoiding other cultivators, Li Fan went straight to the Tai Hall. The clone didn't have the azure flame illusionary spirit, so it took quite some effort to pass through the sword forest in front of the Tai Hall. Disciple Fan Lin of the Cloudwater Heavenly Palace's Law Transmission Hall seeks an audience with Patriarch Tai. While practicing the recently learned Kanghai wave treading, the clone shouted. The bizarre monster woke up from its slumber. It was still a bit confused, but the aura of Qin Tang's personally transmitted technique couldn't be faked. After Tai observed for a while, he handed over the colorfully lit Cloudwater map to Li Fan. After obtaining the cloud water map, to avoid unnecessary trouble, the clone hastily returned to the Tianshuan mirror and chose to complete the task. The Tianshuan mirror's response was identical to that of the 12th life. Unable to verify the authenticity of the cloud water map, please wait. After a prolonged silence, the voice of the Tianshuan mirror echoed again. The task issuer requests to visit your space, do you accept? Li Fan naturally chose to agree. After a moment, the white-haired old man, the heavenly doctor, appeared in front of Li Fan with a benevolent face. After a respectful greeting, Li Fan handed over the colorful model. The heavenly doctor took the cloud water map, carefully observed it, and sighed with emotion. After a long time, he asked, how is the situation inside the cloud water heavenly palace now? Li Fan truthfully answered each question. Upon hearing this, a strange expression appeared in the heavenly doctor's cloudy eyes. He fell into another long silence. According to the experience of the 12th life, the heavenly doctor would likely assign another errand. He would ask Li Fan to place a white jade statue in the Cloudwater Heavenly Palace. This white jade statue would, in 5 years, attract the master with the blue ox-drawn carriage. After a fierce battle, the Cloudwater Heavenly Palace would be sealed again. The heavenly doctor remained silent for a long time, seemingly lost in memories. Li Fan had no choice but to wait patiently. However, at this moment, the development took an entirely unexpected turn, far beyond Li Fan's anticipation. Suddenly, after a long silence, the heavenly doctor lifted his head and stared at Li Fan. With a strange expression, he asked, young friend, what are you expecting? Li Fan's mind trembled because he shockingly discovered that his body seemed completely uncontrollable. His mouth opened and closed, revealing all the secrets hidden in his heart without reservation. I'm waiting for you to assign me another task, and let me go to the cloud water. The voice stuttered and sounded peculiar, as if controlled like a puppet. It was somewhat ridiculous and somewhat eerie. In the Tianshuan mirror, Li Fan's main body woke up from cultivation. Taking decisive action, he directly activated the sun-stealing technique, sacrificing the clone's life. Quote. Heavenly Palace, place the jade statue inside. The clone's words were interrupted midway, and its life force visibly declined. The words were abruptly cut off, and it seemed on the verge of death. The white-haired old man revealed a faintly mocking smile. He lightly pointed a finger into the air. Although the clone's body was almost dead, it was forcibly saved in an instant. Quote. As a reward, you will give me a copy of the Heavenly Doctor's Immortal Sutra. The clone managed to finish speaking amidst life and death. Then it completely turned into ashes. Seeing the answer, the heavenly doctor showed a momentary surprise, then smiled with understanding. Good. At the moment when the clone died completely, the feeling of danger in Li Fan's heart had not disappeared. Without hesitation, he immediately recited in his mind. Trail. In the space of the Tianshuan mirror where he was located, it seemed as if a rift had been forcibly torn open. In the crack, the figure of the heavenly doctor was vaguely visible. UTH. The command for truth had already been shouted, but the surrounding scene did not instantly turn into nothingness as before. It seemed as if he had fallen into a quagmire, or as if the connection had been severed. The heavenly doctor's gaze had already penetrated through the crack and landed on Li Fan. At this moment, after 2 years since entering the cultivation world, the accumulated charging progress of truth plummeted instantly. The inexplicable hindrance disappeared, the surrounding scenes became illusory again, and Li Fan's consciousness plunged into darkness. Chapter 216. Patience in Dealing with the Past. A mountain peak gradually appeared before Li Fan's eyes. The automatic protection from truth allowed Li Fan to break free from the heavenly doctor's gaze, successfully returning to the anchor point. The illusory scene turned real again, and Li Fan quickly scanned his surroundings, confirming that he had returned to the third anchor point. He couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. Moments later, the fear brought by the near-death experience under the white-haired old man came belatedly. It descended into his heart, making his heart beat violently. Like someone who had been drowning for a long time and finally surfaced, Li Fan breathed uncontrollably. After a while, he slowly emerged from the fear of escaping from disaster. Heavenly Doctor, above Tao integration. Replaying the recent scene in his mind, Li Fan's face darkened. He never expected the strength of this heavenly doctor to be so terrifying. It far surpassed the black-robed cultivator in the Yuandao province. The heavenly doctor seemed to be able to see through the thoughts in a person's heart. At that moment, a thought had momentarily flashed through the mind of the clone, and he had sensed the anomaly. Even more terrifying was that, by some unknown method, he made the clone completely reveal everything in his heart without resistance or concealment. After saving the clone from the brink of death, he instantly tore through space and found Li Fan's main body. All these methods far exceeded Li Fan's current understanding. Under the sun-stealing technique, my main body and the clone can be considered two unrelated individuals. How did he determine my identity? When joining the 10,000 Immortals Alliance, the Tianquan Mirror also claimed that practicing in the mirror space was completely safe from all attacks. But this heavenly doctor was able to forcibly intrude into my cultivation space, and the Tianquan Mirror showed no response. When introducing him, the Tianquan Mirror didn't even mention his name. Who is this old man? The more Li Fan thought about it, the more unbelievable it seemed. At the same time, waves of fear surged in his heart. If he hadn't been cautious, understanding the terrifying strength of this old man and always interacting with him through the clone. If he hadn't noticed something was wrong and immediately activated truth without hesitation. If truth hadn't accumulated some recharge progress, automatically protecting him. He might have met his end this time. In the hands of this mysterious and unpredictable old man, any secret would be difficult to keep, ultimately leading to an unavoidable death. The cultivation world is indeed too dangerous. Even with an extraordinary treasure like truth, I'm still treading on thin ice. One slight mistake could lead to complete disaster. Li Fan couldn't help but shudder. In addition to the shock, Li Fan also engaged in self-reflection. Since he entered the cultivation world, with the help of truth, his cultivation path had been relatively smooth. The last time he escaped from the hands of the Tao integration cultivator even made Li Fan somewhat complacent. Thinking carefully, those powerful beings who have survived the times of the Great Calamity, the immortal mortal miasma, and the dark ages of cultivation that followed. How could they be simple characters? With the secret of truth in his possession, it was fine as long as he didn't attract the attention of those high-level cultivators. If he had a low cultivation level and recklessly appeared before them without knowing the immensity of the heavens and earth, it would indeed be seeking death. From now on, I need to be more cautious. Li Fan sighed. I can't be greedy for the 100,000 contribution points of the Cloudwater map. After a deep reflection and summarization, when his thoughts calmed down a bit, Li Fan suddenly remembered the Heavenly Doctor's Immortal Sutra he had previously received. As a medical book, its research subjects included not only humans but also various animals and plants in the world. The book once said that the essence of medicine lies in the 4 words: observe, listen, ask, and touch. Observe. Detected the abnormality in the clone's heart. Ask. Got an honest confession from the clone. Touch. Raised from the dead with a pointed finger. Listen. Instantly discovered the relationship between the main body and the clone. What a remarkable principle, to observe, listen, ask, and touch. What an amazing heavenly doctor. The heavenly doctor allowed Li Fan to deeply understand for the first time the terror of those high-level cultivators in the Xuanwang realm. However, having recognized the gap, he did not lose confidence. With truth in hand, as long as I don't die, accumulating strength through repeated reincarnations, there will come a day when I catch up with and surpass them. Li Fan silently said in his heart, suppressing all thoughts about the heavenly doctor deep down. He looked at the options given by truth. When he set the 3rd anchor point, his realm was in the late foundation establishment stage. Since he only lived for a little over 2 years in the previous life and was abruptly halted, he didn't break through, so Li Fan naturally wouldn't choose to save his cultivation progress. He decisively chose the first option, keeping a personal item he possessed, the Tao Transformation Stone. After making his choice, Li Fan first checked the interface of truth which he hadn't looked at for a long time. Name: Li Fan. Realm: Late Foundation Establishment. Physical age: 2399. Mental age: 1212 3700. Virtualization recharging progress: 0%. Anchor charging progress: 1%. Current anchor points: 3. Available anchor points: 0. Bound items: Jade Cosmos 1000 Variations Sutra, Taiyan Boat, Stone Tablet of Prohibition, Damaged Blood Essence of 10,000 People, Tao Transformation Stone. Cultivation Techniques: Venerable Heart Refinement Mantra, Cloudwater Illusory Dream Art, Sun Stealing Technique, Jade Cosmos Thousand Variations Sutra, Spirit Intent Illusion Technique. Divine Abilities. Life and Death Chain, Formless Killing Intent, Insect Binding Technique. The physical and mental age limits have stagnated. After breaking through to the Golden Core stage, there should be significant changes. Anyway, for the current Li Fan, more than 2,000 years of reincarnation time is definitely sufficient. In addition to the several cultivation techniques listed, Li Fan also mastered many more. The Kong Yun Sea Sword and the Kanghai Wave Treading Technique. The Mountain Meditation Technique, an internal cultivation method. Two ancient techniques, the Divine Transformation Tao and the Purple Heaven Soul Observation Technique. And finally, the Infinite Formation Inheritance from Zhang Ziliang. The perverse nature of truth was apparent at this moment. Excluding the 99 lifetimes of using truth to build the foundation, Li Fan has only reincarnated 4 times in the actual cultivation world until now. 4 cycles of reincarnation have made Li Fan's accumulation far surpass any foundation establishment cultivator. While waiting for truth to charge completely, I can practice the Divine Transformation Tao. Thinking like this, Li Fan's consciousness moved, and the deep blue Tao transformation stone appeared in his hand. After arranging the surroundings near the mountain to prevent ordinary people from accidentally entering, Li Fan placed the Tao transformation stone on his forehead. His spiritual consciousness slowly merged with the Tao transformation stone, entering a state of cultivation. On the timeless mountain, in the blink of an eye, 5 years had passed since the anchor point. On this day, as Li Fan's spiritual consciousness completely merged with the Tao transformation stone, a dazzling blue crystal appeared in his dantian. Thoughts circulated, and he carefully sensed the changes. After a moment, Li Fan quickly noticed the difference from before. He couldn't help but show a pleased expression. Ancient techniques are indeed extraordinary. After cultivating the Divine Transformation Tao, not only did the speed of contemplation and deduction increase more than 100-fold, but all the scenes he had experienced before could be freely recalled with just a thought. It was as if he was reliving those experiences firsthand. Li Fan squinted his eyes. When he first met the Heavenly Doctor pointed between his eyebrows and imparted the Heavenly Doctor's Immortal Sutra to the clone. At this moment, under the powerful deductive processing ability of the Tao Transformation Stone, it was slowly replaying. It took nearly a year for Li Fan to completely memorize the Heavenly Doctor's Immortal Sutra. Of course, memorization didn't mean proficient application. Similarly to Li Fan's level of formation theory and the actual proficiency in setting up formations, there was a huge gap. It's just a pure medical scripture and doesn't provide much help for cultivation. Li Fan shook his head with some regret. The technique of observe, listen, ask, and touch in the book is far from the methods of the Heavenly Doctor. However, the Heavenly Doctor seems to practice the Tao of medicine. This, Heavenly Doctor's Immortal Sutra, must be the foundation of his lifelong learning. If one day, I find an extraordinary talent and impart this medical scripture to them, it might not be impossible to emulate the story of the Heavenly Doctor. Of course, it certainly can't be done in the Xuanwang realm. Perhaps in a remote little world far from the cultivation world, it's worth a try. Temporarily putting the thought aside, Li Fan suddenly remembered the deduction technique of the Taiyan sect. The deduction technique of the Tianji sects, Jade Cosmos Thousand Variations Sutra, when cultivated deeply, could also predict the future. However, it was done through sensing chi fluctuations and deducing. The deduction technique of the Taiyan sect, on the other hand, pushed the deductive ability to the extreme, exhausting all possibilities to find the most fitting future trend. In fact, these two deduction techniques might not necessarily be contradictory. On the contrary, they can complement each other. Qi sensing deduction determines the general vague trend. Taiyan calculation precisely predicts the future. But still, none of them can compare to my truth. What deduction technique can be more accurate than knowledge from the future, personally experienced? Li Fan, feeling inspired, descended from the mountain. In the Grand Zon, in the Zhongnan region, in the city of Kangguang. Recently, an unusual event occurred in this prosperous city. A peculiar person named the Heavenly Prophet traveled through the city, setting up a stall to tell fortunes. He only told 3 fortunes per day. Also, he didn't charge any fees, he just selected people to divine for. Initially, the residents of the city thought that this Heavenly Prophet was just a gimmicky scam artist. Because the divination results were accurate or not randomly. However, as time passed, the success rate of this heavenly prophet's divinations became increasingly high. Whether it was finding lost items, determining the whereabouts of missing children, or inquiring about marriage prospects and the gender of unborn children, everything was accurate. Gradually, the name of this heavenly prophet became more and more renowned in the city of Kangwang. People of all ages, men and women, held great respect for him. One day, a nobleman came to Kangwang City for sightseeing. Upon hearing about this, he became interested. Disguised in plain clothes and accompanied by a trusted aide, he came to the heavenly prophet's stall. Seeing the heavenly prophet lying on a long chair, resting with closed eyes, the nobleman asked, "Esteemed Taoist, have you finished divining for today?" The nobleman had already inquired about the rules before coming. Without opening his eyes, the heavenly prophet lazily replied, "You're clearly asking something you already know. If the divination is complete, I would naturally pack up and go home. Why would I stay here?" The nobleman felt a bit awkward at the response. However, the aide, seeing his master slighted, became furious. He didn't care about the reputation of the heavenly prophet, and was about to smash the stall. The nobleman reached out, stopping his aide, and said, "So be it, Taoist, please divine for me." The heavenly prophet, still with closed eyes, replied, "This humble Taoist had already foreseen that you two would come. I've already divined for you in advance. In the small wooden box at the upper left corner of the stall, there is a piece of paper. You'll understand once you take a look." Hearing this, the aide was disdainful, scoffing, playing tricks. The nobleman, however, had a solemn expression and thanked the heavenly prophet. After opening the wooden box and taking out the paper, he unfolded it slowly. As soon as he read the words on the paper, his face turned deathly pale. A mix of shock, fear, and joy filled his heart, causing his hands to go weak, and the paper slipped to the ground. Seeing this, the nobleman, disregarding manners, quickly stooped down to pick up the paper. He tightly clutched it in his hand, fearing that others might see it. His body trembled with excitement, and he repeated the 16 large characters on the paper in his mind. 9 years of hibernation, waiting for the opportune moment. On the day of your brother's death, become an emperor. Observing his master's unexpected reaction, the aide couldn't help but feel perplexed. Since the tragic events of that day, there had been few things that could disturb his master. Could it be that this heavenly prophet indeed possessed some extraordinary abilities? It's just that no one knew what the heavenly prophet had written on the small piece of paper for his master. The nobleman didn't pay attention to his aide's thoughts. Taking a deep breath to calm his excitement, he was about to bow respectfully to the heavenly prophet. However, to his astonishment, the heavenly prophet, who had been there just a moment ago, had suddenly disappeared before his eyes. Both the nobleman and his aide were horrified. Could there really be ghosts and deities in this world? Both returned to their residence, overwhelmed and confused, and retired to their respective rooms. The aide, however, unexpectedly discovered a piece of paper in his pocket at some point. Curiosity getting the better of him, he opened the paper. Seeing the writing on the paper, he couldn't help but look bewildered. 2 poetic lines were written on it. "Peaceful times are what victorious generals bring, but victorious generals are not allowed to see peaceful times." Muttering repeatedly, he instinctively tore the paper into pieces and swallowed it. Above the city of Kangwang, seeing the reactions of the nobleman and his aide, a mysterious smile appeared on Li Fan's face. "Before, I heard your dying words, and as a result, I had an insight, successfully building the foundation with truth. Now, I've divined for you as a repayment for that day. I hope that in this life, your fate will be different." The 2 individuals who were divined today were naturally the king of Langya and the future general who would quell the rebellion. Li Fan, disguised as the heavenly prophet, roamed around, comprehending the path of divination. After settling down in Kangwang City, his divination skills became increasingly refined. By chance, he encountered the king of Langya and his aide, leading to the events of today. Casual and unrestrained, resolving a cause and effect. Li Fan's thoughts were clear, and his mood was pleasant. No longer lingering here, he returned to the mountain. In an instant, scenes from this period flashed through his mind. Li Fan developed his own understanding of the so-called divination technique. My spiritual consciousness enveloped everything in Kangwang City. With the terrifying deductive ability of the Tao Transformation Stone, every detail was within my sight. For the city's affairs alone, with all causes and details accounted for, I can predict about 80 to 90% accurately. However, the world is not confined to just one city. Kangwon City is located at the intersection of canals, with developed shipping. Merchants come and go in endless streams, with more than tens of thousands entering and leaving every day. These are what are called variables. The more variables, the lower the accuracy of my deductions. Besides external influences, the human heart is unpredictable, which is also a kind of variable. As the number of people and the scope of the city expand, the variables to deal with also increase. At this point, relying solely on deductive ability is almost ineffective. It still requires the support of a divination technique. Having realized this truth, Li Fan had no intention of actively seeking a divination technique. In essence, this art of divination was just a casual attempt by Li Fan during the waiting period for truth to recharge, a result of boredom. It's not necessary to force it. The most important thing is the improvement of cultivation realm. Li Fan silently set a goal in his heart. In this life, he must break through to the golden core stage. As time passed, in the blink of an eye, it was approaching the 9th year. With truth about to complete its recharge, Li Fan made another trip to Yi Xing's grave and obtained the heaven-locked treasure box. He didn't forget to take along the stone tablet of prohibition and fuse it with the piece from Qianhong's grave. Subsequently, after the usual sweep, he filled the Taiyan boat. With everything ready, Li Fan broke through the immortal extinction formation and returned to the cultivation world. Li Fan felt the layout and planning from the previous life was mostly problem-free until the encounter with the heavenly doctor. Furthermore, the starting cultivation level in this life was the same as the previous one. Considering that changing actions might lead to unexpected variables, Li Fan decided to follow the previous life's events. He slaughtered the giant luli fish, and obtained the golden luli pearl, ensuring the occurrence of the spirit mist grass incident. He then joined the 10,000 Immortals Alliance through He Zhenghao. He performed the blue blood coral mission and befriended Chen Ying with the azure flame illusionary spirit as bait. He killed Sikong Yi and obtained the sun-stealing token. He intimidated He Zhenghao, making him temporarily halt the smuggling operation. Borrowed spirit mist grass at Clearwind Hall. Joined the 10,000 Immortals Alliance as an employee, successfully passing the inquiry platform with the help of the 7 Aperture Exquisite Heart. Completed merit tasks, and raised permission level. In the turmoil of the spirit mist grass, profited without risk. Utilized Zhou Qingong's espionage incident, threatened He Zhenghao, and signed a work contract. Relearned the mountain meditation technique, and purchased the pre-expedition realm. He caused Yi Feipeng, Xiao Heng, and others to be stranded on a deserted island. Commissioned Zhao Shuyuan to find the minor medicine king cauldrons. Simply going through the previous life's process took only a year or two. Li Fan was very patient. However, with the experience of the previous life, Li Fan made some adjustments to the handling of a few things. Firstly, during the spirit mist grass incident, he clearly knew the timing of when Tianshuan Mirror would release the announcement. However, to avoid suspicion, Li Fan cautiously waited until the price of spirit mist grass reached 350 points before selling all 2,900 plants in batches. A total profit of 980,000 contribution points was made. Secondly, in this life, when Li Fan was creating the clone, he used a heavenly treasure that he had purchased. The clone's cultivation suddenly advanced to the foundation establishment mid-stage. Afterwards, instead of himself, the clone purchased the White Bone Pre-Expedition realm and played the role of the skull to deceive Xiaoheng and others. Moreover, Li Fan vividly described the might of the 10,000 Immortals Alliance, advised Xiaoheng to prioritize cultivating, and instructed him to pretend to be an ordinary cultivator with a fortuitous encounter. He refrained from purchasing techniques from Tianshuan Mirror this time to prevent any unforeseen situations. Xiaoheng received the sea-fixing sword technique, and Yi Feipeng received Kanghai wave treading. It would take some time for Su Xiaomei and Su Changyu to cultivate. As long as an ownerless technique was found before then, it would be fine. Li Fan and his clone separately could go to Qin Tang to receive techniques and solve the issue. However, considering the possibility of needing a large number of techniques in the future, Li Fan thought it was necessary to find a stable channel outside the 10,000 Immortals Alliance for purchasing techniques. After some thought, Li Fan's clone contacted Zhao Shuyuan. Soon, there was a reply. Fellow Taoist wants to buy golden core techniques. Why not buy from Tianshuan Mirror? Could it be that you haven't found a suitable one? I don't have any techniques for sale here, such a big deal is beyond my ability. But if fellow Taoist really has a demand, I know a place that can satisfy your requirements. Have you heard of the Wanfa Chamber of Commerce? Li Fan was slightly stunned. A very similar name instantly came to mind. This Wanfa Chamber of Commerce, is it related to the Wanhua Chamber of Commerce? Li Fan asked. That's right. In fact, Wanhua Chamber of Commerce is the Wanfa Chamber of Commerce, it's just that it's specifically responsible for mortal business, so it adopted a different name, Zhao Shuyuan replied. Wanfa Chamber of Commerce. Li Fan couldn't help but recall that just before the arrival of the Crimson Flame, the Wanhua Chamber of Commerce had received a notice to completely withdraw from the Kongyan Sea. This Wanfa Chamber of Commerce is quite interesting. Chapter 217, Great Divides. Fellow Taoist Zhao, I wonder about the background of this Wanfa Chamber of Commerce. Wanfa, such grandiosity, could it be that this Chamber of Commerce truly possesses over 10,000 techniques? Li Fan asked immediately. 1. When it comes to the origin of the Wanfa Chamber of Commerce, we have to go back to the period right after the Great Calamity, before a new order was established, Zhao Shuyuan explained to Li Fan. Usually, this period is referred to as the Desolate Age. At that time, the number of cultivators had dropped to its lowest point. The survivors of the calamity were true lone wanderers. Isolated and alone, apart from themselves, they wouldn't trust anyone else. Cultivators sought refuge in the wilderness, exploring ruins, and searching for opportunities. An individual's energy was limited, and sometimes they couldn't practice extra techniques they found. At that point, they naturally thought of using techniques to exchange for other useful items with fellow cultivators. But in that era, the trust among cultivators had almost approached zero. To successfully trade, an intermediary that everyone trusted was undoubtedly indispensable. The Wanfa Chamber of Commerce was one of these former intermediaries. It's also the only organization that could survive even after the establishment of the 10,000 Immortals Alliance and the Five Elders Association. During the Desolate Age, cultivators were scarce, but techniques were abundant. Often, a single cultivator would own several techniques acquired through robbery or fortuitous encounters. The Wanfa Chamber of Commerce, during that time, amassed an unimaginable number of techniques. This is why it could stand tall for thousands of years and still exist today. Zhao Shuyuan slowly explained the origin of the Wanfa Chamber of Commerce. Li Fan, upon hearing this, couldn't help but ask, does that mean there's a powerful expert at the Longevity Immortal realm or above behind this Wanfa Chamber of Commerce? An ordinary Dao integration cultivator probably couldn't safeguard so many techniques. Zhao Shuyuan nodded, the majority of cultivators also think the same. Now, both the 10,000 Immortals Alliance and the Five Elders Association tacitly acknowledge the existence of the Wanfa Chamber of Commerce. If it can make these two behemoths make concessions, the cultivator behind it is undoubtedly formidable. However, the true identity of this powerhouse is far beyond the knowledge of small figures like us. Li Fan casually praised, fellow Taoists, 1,000-mile hall spans the entire cultivation world, you can't be considered a small figure. He then inquired with some confusion, according to what fellow Taoist said, the business of this Wanfa Chamber of Commerce has been recognized by the 10,000 Immortals Alliance. Why have I never seen them on the 10,000 Immortals Alliance's premises? Even for the Wanhua Chamber of Commerce, which deals with mortal affairs, I've only seen them walking around, never their stores. The 10,000 Immortals Alliance and the Five Elders Association have their own independent trading systems. They wouldn't allow the Wanfa Chamber of Commerce to enter and compete for business. Although the current Wanfa Chamber of Commerce has gained recognition from these two giants, its scale is not as large as before. It can only survive in the gaps, Zhao Shuyuan smiled. The Wanfa Chamber of Commerce is now active only in the border areas between the territories of the 10,000 Immortals Alliance and the Five Elders Association. These places are chaotic, with weak control from both sides and a large number of wandering cultivators. In these regions, neutral organizations like the Wanfa Chamber of Commerce are favored. Moreover, both the 10,000 Immortals Alliance and the Five Elders Association have various special products within their respective territories. Although there is official trade between the 10,000 Immortals Alliance and the Five Elders Association in non-conflict years, the important strategic resources are generally not included in the exchange catalog. And these resources have significant demand. Therefore, passing them through the Wanfa Chamber of Commerce as an intermediary becomes a solution. Of course, the prices are naturally much higher. Sometimes they are several times higher, it's normal. For example, on the Five Elders Association's side, there is a kind of elixir called the Tao Enlightenment Elixir. It is said to be a secret inheritance of an ancient sect. After consumption, it can increase the affinity of one's own body to Tao laws, significantly reducing the difficulty of comprehending the Tao and improving the cultivation speed. Li Fan was stunned. Isn't that similar to the enlightenment effect of the Tianquan mirror? Exactly. What's even more incredible is that the effect of the Tao Enlightenment Elixir can perfectly complement the Tianquan mirror's enlightenment. Enlightenment improves one's own comprehension, while the Tao Enlightenment Elixir reduces the difficulty of understanding the Tao. When combined, their synergy makes cultivation astonishingly fast, Zhao Shuyuan praised with a click of his tongue. Within the alliance, many have coveted the Tao Enlightenment Elixir for a long time. However, despite trying various methods, they couldn't crack the formula. So, every year, they can only introduce a limited quantity through the Wanfa Chamber of Commerce. The Tao Enlightenment Elixir, on the side of the Five Elders Association, reportedly costs only 50 low-grade spirit stones per pill, which is equivalent to our 50 contribution points. It's practically given away for free. However, at the Wanfa Chamber of Commerce, due to the scarcity of supply and high demand, the price skyrockets tenfold, reaching around 500 contribution points per pill. Even so, countless cultivators are willing to buy it. There's no way around it. This stuff is just too effective. Zhao Shuyuan sighed. Li Fan's clone pondered for a moment and tentatively asked, I've heard from a golden core cultivator before about the existence of the fallen immortal realm and pre-expedition realms. It seems that anonymous transactions can take place in a pre-expedition realm. Can't cultivators from the 10,000 Immortals Alliance and the Five Elders Association do that? Zhao Shuyuan was somewhat surprised. You even know about the existence of the pre-expedition realms, fellow Taoist. After thinking for a moment, he explained in a hushed tone, in the past, doing so was not a problem. However, later on, such convenient and secretive trading methods gave rise to a lot of speculation, profiteering, and malicious activities. This caused the prices of goods in the 10,000 Immortals Alliance and the Five Elders Association to spiral out of control. Spies took advantage of the situation, stealing a large amount of classified information through these transactions. Subsequently, two powerful figures from both sides simultaneously made a move, creating two great divides, respectively. Since then, cultivators from the 10,000 Immortals Alliance and the Five Elders Association can no longer communicate through a pre-expedition realm. If a cultivator from the 10,000 Immortals Alliance wants to enter the pre-expedition realm located in the territory of the Five Elders Association, their divine sense will be obstructed by the two great divides. The same applies on the other side. Li Fan nodded slowly. I understand. So, if I want to purchase techniques through the Wanfa Chamber of Commerce, I'll have to go there in person. Yes. The nearest stronghold of the Wanfa Chamber of Commerce is located in the Jushan Province, near Yongliang Province, Zhao Shuyuan advised. Jushan Province is not very peaceful. If fellow Taoist really intends to go, you can coordinate with other 10,000 Immortals Alliance cultivators and make arrangements together. It would be good to have mutual support on the way. Thanks for the guidance, fellow Taoist. The journey is long, and the risks are a bit high. I'll think about it some more. Li Fan responded. Meanwhile, Li Fan's main body searched for information within the Tianquan mirror on the journey from the Kongyun Sea to the Jushan province. As expected, there were many cultivators recruiting teammates for the journey. Asterisk 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 asterisk. 1. The literal meaning of Wanfa is something like 10,000 laws, or 10,000 Taos. Chapter 218, discussing martial Tao while seated. However, these recruitment messages only mentioned companionship on the journey to Jushan province. The specific purpose was left vague. It was clear they assumed everyone understood without the need for explicit details. It's only the 10th year, there's no rush, Li Fan pondered to himself. I'll wait until the 11th year when the Cloudwater Heavenly Palace opens. I'll see if my clone can obtain another technique from Qin Tang. Then, I'll send my clone on a trip. Having made a decision, Li Fan temporarily set this matter aside. He turned to Zhang Zhengji of the Martial Hall and inquired about improving practical combat skills. The reason for doing so was not just to enhance his own combat abilities. More importantly, Li Fan wanted to defeat Zhang Qinmo of the Purple Heaven sect in the Fallen Immortal Realm as soon as possible, to see if he could go elsewhere afterward. Li Fan found that he was trapped in Ningyuan City in the Fallen Immortal Realm. During this lifetime, he had entered the Fallen Immortal Realm 3 times in succession. The entry point remained the same each time. It was just before Jiang Qinmo went to Ningyuan City to collect the longevity fruits. To break free from this situation, Li Fan attempted 3 different approaches. The first time, he followed the plot and feigned death first. Then, taking advantage of Jiang Qinmo and others' big battle, he sneaked out of Ningyuan City unnoticed. Unfortunately, he didn't fly far before Jiang Qinmo caught up to him. Under the cries of "Evil Demon," he was ultimately killed by a purple thunderbolt. The second time, Li Fan directly turned the tables. He secretly communicated with Song Yisong and collaborated to attack Jiang Qinmo. Jiang Qinmo was seriously injured, but Li Fan and the others were helpless against the purple energy in his body. After his rebirth, Jiang Qinmo's strength greatly increased, and he effortlessly killed Li Fan and the others one by one. The third time, Li Fan simply found an excuse, saying he didn't want to go to Ningyuan City and wanted to return to the sect. Unexpectedly, Jiang Qinmo's expression changed immediately, and without saying a word, he attacked. They fought for a long time, eventually ending in defeat for Li Fan. Time and time again, it was frustrating. But he indeed was not Jiang Qinmo's opponent. In the 10,000 Immortals Alliance, means to improve a cultivator's combat effectiveness were strictly limited. Even with Li Fan's current permission level of 10, he still hadn't found any useful results. So, Li Fan could only try and ask Zhang Zhengji. His response was as expected. The martial hall's various combat techniques are under control and cannot be passed on. I'm sorry, I can't help with this favor. Originally, it was just a casual question, and Li Fan didn't have high hopes. Li Fan still politely thanked him. Whether out of caution or curiosity, after a while, Zhang Zhengji sent another message. What does fellow Taoist want to improve his combat skills for? From what I know, fellow Taoist is just a formation master, right? Could it be that there's some enemy? Li Fan's heart skipped a beat, but he wasn't flustered. He said, no, there's no enemy. It's just that I often spar with a fellow Taoist but always end up losing. It's just a matter of being unsatisfied mentally. In fact, I don't even necessarily need to improve my practical combat skills. I just want to defeat him once. After a while, Zhang Zhengji replied, hee, so that's the case. Everyone has a competitive spirit. I understand. If fellow Taoist wants to improve practical combat skills, I can't help with that favor. However, if you want to defeat an opponent, I do have an idea. Li Fan's spirit shook. Fellow Taoist, please speak. We, the Martial Hall, have applied for a functional zone in the Tianquan realm named, Discussing Tao while seated. Utilizing the powerful calculation ability of the Tianquan mirror, by inputting the realms, techniques, divine abilities, and secret techniques of both parties in advance, we can simulate the combat process between the two. There's no need to input the specific content of techniques, only descriptions of the performance during battle. Based on the described strengths and weaknesses, the Tianquan mirror will generate virtual Tao discussants of varying strengths. After creating your own Tao discussant, you can not only spar with it by simulating yourself but also engage in mutual battles with Tao discussants of other cultivators. This is what we call discussing Tao while seated. Of course, the Tianquan mirror will also, based on actual circumstances, make strength adjustments to the created Tao discussants. Exaggerations like effortlessly tearing open space with a casual move are not feasible. Li Fan, upon hearing this, suddenly became interested. Unable to resist, he asked, is this function exclusive to your martial hall? If I want to use it, what can I do? Zhang Zhengji immediately replied, hee, although it's generally not open to outsiders, if invited by internal personnel, outsiders can also use it. As he spoke, he sent over a black and white icon. 2 figures sat on the left and right. In the middle was the ancient character for Tao. Li Fan probed it with his spiritual consciousness. He then received a prompt from the Tianquan mirror. Discuss Tao while seated has been loaded. Inviter, 10,000 Immortals Island, Zhang Zhengji. Cultivator Li Fan, you have activated the Discuss Tao while seated function. You are given 1 free opportunity to create a Tao discussant and 3 chances for mutual battles. In the future, you can check and use the Discuss Tao while seated function at any time. Li Fan was keenly aware of the word, free, and quickly understood the trick. However, with his current wealth, he didn't care about the contribution point cost. Silently, he opened Discuss Tao while seated and took a look. In an instant, many pieces of information appeared before his eyes. Dao Integration Realm, Senior Sister Zhao, the world's #1. With one person and one sword, she suppresses a great Dao sect, undefeated throughout the ages. If you don't agree, come and fight. Nascent Soul Realm, Middle-Aged Heavenly Desolate Emperor, invincible in the world. Already on a 33-game winning streak, welcome fellow cultivators to come and challenge. Nascent Soul Realm, Middle-Aged Heavenly Leaf Emperor, unparalleled in mind and body, possessing a sacred physique. Not inferior to the Heavenly Desolate Emperor. Soul Transformation Realm, the peak of immortals, pride of the world, Lan En. As a newly created Dao discussant, one word, invincible. Dao Integration Realm, Immortal Emperor Yu Lan, welcomes all real Dao discussants to come and challenge. Please, Dao discussants from various fictional novels, don't apply for battles, okay? What's the point of daydreaming all the time? I won't accept challenges. Li Fan looked through these pieces of information one by one, revealing a strange expression. It turned out that the majority of the Dao discussants created by cultivators in this discuss Dao while seated were actually fictional characters from novels. For example, he knew the great Dao sect's senior sister Zhao. She was the protagonist of Ancient History of Cultivation, a book he had read before. This book, written in the first person, narrates how senior sister Zhao, starting as an outer disciple, went through various trials, step by step becoming an inner disciple, a core disciple, and finally, the sect master of the great Dao sect. Unexpectedly, senior sister Zhao had gained considerable popularity. On this discuss Dao while seated, with just a glance, there were dozens of cultivators choosing her as a prototype to create Dao discussants. Chapter 219, Heaven Exterminating Great Dao Scripture. Li Fan, out of curiosity, inquired and learned that besides Ancient History of Cultivation, senior sister Zhao had also appeared in many novels and scripts. Most of these novels were derivative stories based on Ancient History of Cultivation. The thematic development of these stories was mostly centered around senior sister Zhao. Many of the plotlines were quite indecent and unsuitable for detailed description. In the Xuanwang realm, novels with female protagonists were already rare. Characters like senior sister Zhao, who combined unparalleled beauty with strength and high status, were even rarer. Gaining a group of die-hard fans was, of course, quite normal. Senior sister Zhao's high popularity was not only due to her character but also because her character template was indeed exceptionally strong. The Dao discussants created based on her template had an astonishingly high win rate, leaving people astounded. In discussing Dao while seated, participating in battles required contributions. However, the winning side would be refunded half of the contributions. Therefore, besides having enough money, choosing a powerful Dao discussant template was also crucial for those wanting to engage in continuous sparring matches. Li Fan casually selected a battle featuring senior sister Zhao and started watching. The surrounding scenery, along with his body, disappeared in an instant. Li Fan felt as if he had entered the cosmic void. A female cultivator wearing Taoist robes, with a figure that couldn't be hidden despite the loose attire, stood silently in the distance. Her eyes were like water, and her skin resembled white snow. Her cold face seemed like an ancient, unchanging iceberg, radiating an aura that repelled people from miles away. However, the subtle charm in her eyes made people's hearts itch and flutter with imagination. Soon, an old man with a withered appearance, dressed in ragged clothes, appeared in this spatial area, ready to battle her. Disrespectful Taoist, I don't know his origin. Li Fan focused his gaze on the old man, and information suddenly appeared in his mind. Please. Both sides spoke simultaneously, and then the great battle began. The battle of discussing Dao was only a simulation by the Tianquan mirror. It couldn't compare to the battles of real Dao integration realm experts, where each move carried profound Dao resonance. However, it allowed cultivators to gain insights simply by observing. In this vast virtual space, visual effects like light, shadow, destruction, and vibration were taken to the extreme. Except for the lack of actual spiritual energy, it was almost impossible to distinguish between reality and illusion. To prevent spectators from being confused, the Tianquan mirror provided thoughtful explanations for the techniques used by both sides. Disrespectful Taoist wielded a bamboo staff, striking the void. Suddenly, countless spatial rifts appeared around senior sister Zhao. Dark godly lightning thundered out from the rifts, aiming to strike her simultaneously. However, all the lightning lost its aggressiveness the moment it approached senior sister Zhao. As if the fiercest tiger had turned into an obedient kitten. The lightning surrounded her like a pampered concubine, gentle and obedient. Senior Sister Zhao pointed a slender finger, and the dark light reversed, striking back at the disrespectful Taoist. The disrespectful Taoist coldly snorted, scratched himself, and opened his mouth to swallow the divine lightning. Through the Tianquan mirror's commentary, Li Fan learned what was happening. The disrespectful Taoist used sky-annihilating divine lightning for the attack. It was easily countered by Senior Sister Zhao's Self-Dao, a divine ability she gained after mastering the heaven-exterminating Great Dao scripture. With Self-Dao, a special field formed around Senior Sister Zhao, assimilating all forms of enemy attacks into a part of her own strength. Self-Dao, this is a bit tricky. How can this be fought? Li Fan couldn't help but ponder. The disrespectful Taoist of an unknown origin displayed terrifying destructive power in each move and style. However, no matter what, Senior Sister Zhao couldn't be harmed in any way. Instead, each attack was perfectly replicated and rebounded. Senior Sister Zhao stood still like a mountain, while disrespectful Taoist became weaker with every exchange. Not long after, Senior Sister Zhao seized an opportunity and effortlessly killed him with a move called Heaven-Slaying Sword Qi. The surrounding scenes vanished, and Li Fan returned to the Tianquan mirror. This self-Dao by Senior Sister Zhao is quite fascinating. However, Zhang Zhengji did mention the rules before. The Tianquan mirror will make actual adjustments to character templates, and strength exceeding reality won't be displayed during battles. But Senior Sister Zhao is completely unaffected. Does that mean there really is a technique similar to self-Dao in reality? Or, a strange expression flashed across Li Fan's face. Great Dao Sect, Senior Sister Zhao. The Five Elders Association, Dao Enlightenment Elixir. The first-person narrative in Ancient History of Cultivation. And the many derivative vulgar scripts circulating within the 10,000 Immortals Alliance. Li Fan's eyelids twitched a few times, and he began to have some speculations in his mind. However, this matter involved the upper echelons of both sides, the top powerhouses. Li Fan silently speculated for a while, then pushed this matter to the depths of his mind. Turning his attention to more important matters, he created a Dao discussant using Zhang Qinmo of the Purple Heaven sect as a prototype. Foundation Establishment Cultivation, Purple Heaven Royal Thunder Technique, a long halberd weapon. After death, he can rebirth from the purple golden core within the body, and his strength soars, allowing him to easily slaughter golden core early-stage cultivators. Li Fan accurately restored the strength of Zhang Qinmo, with whom he had fought several times. At the same time, he gained some insights. In discussing Dao while seated, it was possible to create the same Dao discussants. However, if one had only superficially read about a character in a book and only had a conceptual understanding of the character's strength without knowing the specifics, then the created Dao discussant's strength would definitely fall far short of the character's true upper limit. On the contrary, the better one understood the character's original template, the closer the created Dao discussant would be to their actual strength. After clashing with Zhang Qinmo several times, Li Fan believed that the Dao discussant created based on his understanding was quite close to Zhang Qinmo's actual strength. At the very least, it was not far from the combat power Zhang Qinmo had displayed so far. Next, using himself as a blueprint, Li Fan spent 1,000 contribution points to create another character. He outlined the maximum power of his Kong Yun sword and heaven overturning palm, changed the techniques, names, and successfully created the character. Li Fan tried to manipulate his two Dao discussants for the first battle. Unexpectedly, he received a prompt from the Tianquan mirror. After calculation, the win rate of Dao discussant Fan Lin is approximately 0. Do you still want to initiate the battle? Li Fan's face turned black at the words and could only abandon the attempt. After thinking for a while, he posted an extremely arrogant message. Foundation Establishment Stage Li Qinmo of the Azure Heaven Sect, invincible in the Foundation Establishment realm, desperately seeking defeat. If you don't agree, come and fight me. In discussing Dao while seated, there were relatively few Dao discussants with Foundation Establishment cultivation. Li Fan had to leave the challenge information there and wait for others to come and challenge him. I hope there's a method to defeat Zhang Qinmo that I can learn from. With this thought, Li Fan temporarily exited discussing Dao while seated. Chapter 220, 6 Desires Without Form Technique. By creating a Dao discussant and engaging in battles with others, Li Fan sought ways to defeat Zhang Qinmo. This is just one of Li Fan's many attempts. Anyway, he's not short of contribution points now, so even if he fails, it wouldn't be a big deal. If it really doesn't work, I'll have to wait until I break through the golden core stage and directly capture him using the insect binding technique. Li Fan thought silently. Putting this matter aside for now, Li Fan took out a deep blue stone from his storage ring and gently stroked it. It was the same Dao transformation stone he obtained from the heaven-locked treasure box in his previous life. Although he couldn't remember the unlocking method of the heaven-locked treasure box in the previous life, with the help of the Tianshuan mirror in this life, Li Fan, who had mastered the divine transformation Dao, effortlessly memorized the correct sequence of the 49,999 sheets of paper. If there is a next life, I won't need to trouble the Tianshuan mirror. I can save some contribution points. Li Fan probed the Dao transformation stone with his spiritual consciousness. In an instant, a faint blue light flickered. Threads of energy flowed out from the Dao transformation stone and were absorbed by Li Fan's spiritual consciousness. The blue crystal in his dantian also seemed to become deeper. These two Dao transformation stones are originally one. Although they won't automatically merge like heavenly treasures, I can slowly absorb them into one with the secret method of divine transformation Dao. Eventually, they will merge with the one in my dantian. Now, Dao transformation stones are hard to come by, and the one in my dantian is just a low-quality one. It's not particularly rare. However, with each reincarnation, I can have one more low-quality Dao transformation stone to absorb. Even if the effect of one or two stones is not great, what if there are hundreds or thousands? Quantity can lead to a qualitative change. Even in the end, it's not impossible to restore the original, Mother Dao transformation stone, of the Tai Yan sect. With these thoughts, an inexplicable color flashed in Li Fan's eyes. The only limitation is that my spiritual consciousness is still too weak at the moment. The absorption and transformation efficiency is too slow. Methods to strengthen the spiritual consciousness still don't show up in the Tianshuan mirror. I still have to rely on the fallen immortal realm. The reason why Li Fan was anxious to change locations in the fallen immortal realm was that when absorbing Li Chen's corpse, the effect of strengthening his spiritual consciousness seemed to only be effective once. The several deaths afterwards did not strengthen Li Fan's spiritual consciousness. I can't be too hasty, I need to take it step by step. Li Fan sighed slightly. With a multitasking approach, Li Fan simultaneously practiced the mountain meditation technique and absorbed the Dao transformation stone. Time passed quietly. Soon, it was the day when the Cloudwater Heavenly Palace would open. Li Fan's main body did not move, and continued cultivating in the Tianshuan mirror. He simply let his clone go, receiving a nascent soul technique called 6 Desires Without Form from Qin Tang. It could stimulate the innate desires of joy, anger, grief, fear, love, and hatred, transforming them into 6 different divine abilities. As the chief of the Law Transmission Hall, Senior Brother Qin's treasures are truly inexhaustible. Now, Su Xiaomei also has a technique. Unfortunately, the Heavenly Doctor has taught me a lesson. I've already learned his Cloudwater illusory dream art, and I dare not take advantage of others' weaknesses again. If that anomalous Senior Brother Qin perceives something amiss, I might be forced to use truth. Li Fan shook his head regretfully. Thinking of Su Xiaomei and the others, his thoughts turned, and his perspective suddenly shifted to the deserted island. He had long locked onto Yi Feipeng and Xiao Heng with the formless killing intent. At this moment, Li Fan found that over a year had passed, and Xiao Heng had already reached the mid-foundation establishment stage. It seemed that he was not far from breaking through to the late foundation establishment stage. Yi Feipeng's cultivation progress was slightly slower. It seemed that he had just broken through to the mid-foundation establishment stage, and his aura was still somewhat unstable. At this time, the two were sparring. Xiao Heng could already condense 19 sea-fixing swords. The blue water swords flew up and down like wandering dragons, roaring as they attacked Yi Feipeng. Yi Feipeng was calm and not in a hurry. His figure seemed elusive, making it difficult to grasp. Wind was generated under his feet, allowing him to easily evade the attacks of the water swords one by one. With every step he took, a water blade would generate under his feet and silently fly toward Xiao Heng. But each time it approached Xiao Heng, it was blocked by a water sword that suddenly appeared. Yi Feipeng was not discouraged but continued to approach Xiao Heng. Slowly, when he was only 1 foot away from Xiao Heng, a triumphant smile appeared on his face. Suddenly, he realized that he was surrounded by 19 sea-fixing swords without any knowledge. No matter how good one's stance was, one could not escape. Yi Feipeng decisively shouted, "I surrender." Xiao Heng smiled faintly, and the sea-fixing swords whizzed past, cutting off a strand of Yi Feipeng's hair. "Fatty, you have to work harder. With the hair I've collected here, it's enough to weave you a dress," Xiao Heng said with a smile. "What's the point of being complacent? One day, I will beat you up thoroughly." Yi Feipeng snorted coldly, stepping back and leaving. Arriving at the beach, Yi Feipeng contemplated silently, "If I stay on this deserted island to cultivate all the time, I will always be overshadowed by that kid. It's really an insult to a reborn person." I remember it was roughly the next year that Zhang Haobo suddenly rose to prominence. In just a year, he went from an ordinary person to a cultivator in the mid-foundation establishment stage. Although I don't know what happened in between, it doesn't prevent me from intercepting him. Take advantage of his opportunities for myself. And the year after, the Tianyang cave will open. Although that Tianyang is actually a soul transformation puppet, as long as I slip away before it reveals its complete form, there shouldn't be a problem. However, it's a bit too much for me alone. I have to find a way to pull Xiao Heng over and let him block those guardian puppets for me. With my speed, I should be able to sweep through and leave safely. Thinking like this, Yi Feipeng wrote down the names Zhang Haobo, Tianyang, etc., on the beach, a look of expectation on his face. Later, he used his foot to wipe away the handwriting. In the Tianshuan mirror, Li Fan smiled when he saw this scene. It turns out that he has the idea of snatching Zhang Haobo's opportunities. No matter, I've already made arrangements. Let's see if Yi Feipeng can attract the attention of the Kong Yun Si in this life, and bear half of the Kanghai Pearl. Shifting his attention away from the deserted island, Li Fan checked the messages he had received in the meantime and couldn't help but feel a bit amused and helpless. This fellow Taoist, your Li Qinmo, is really outrageous. Not only can he be resurrected, but his strength can also become stronger after resurrection. It's really absurd. I have already reported to the Tianshuan mirror, there must be something wrong. How can the combat power of a foundation establishment cultivator be so outrageous? Can fellow Taoist reveal who the prototype of this Li Qinmo is? I am willing to buy this information from you for 500 contribution points. These messages were sent by cultivators who had failed in battles against Zhang Qinmo. Li Fan took a look at Zhang Qinmo's recent record. 8 victories and 1 draw. No need to say much about the victories. After his rebirth, he basically crushed his opponents. But that draw was interesting. The other side, although not strong in terms of strength, had a defense that was outstanding to an absurd level. The body was surrounded by shields resembling turtle shells from all directions. No matter what techniques Zhang Qinmo used, he couldn't break through the defense. Even when the purple heaven royal thunder struck the turtle shell, it only left a black mark. As the cultivator chuckled, the black mark returned to its original state. When Li Fan looked at the name of this cultivator, he was speechless. Xen Ren. 1. He immediately blocked this cultivator and permanently refused his battle requests. After blacklisting him, Li Fan, feeling refreshed, suddenly received a communication prompt. He opened it, and it turned out to be from Formation Master Zhang Ziliang. Finally, their group had more or less completed the research on the mountain and river formation. Back at the formation hall. Since joining, Li Fan had only met him once on that island. This time, Zhang Ziliang asked Li Fan to come to the formation hall to assess Li Fan's formation proficiency again and then, based on the results, arrange for subsequent work. Li Fan didn't delay, changing into the black and yellow robe and arriving at the formation hall. Zhang Ziliang was already waiting. In addition to Zhang Ziliang, there was another unfamiliar foundation establishment cultivator. It seemed that, like Li Fan, this person also held the position of a formation repairer. After exchanging greetings with the two, Li Fan stood quietly on the side. Zhang Ziliang gestured for Li Fan to wait for a moment. Afterwards, 3 more foundation establishment cultivators arrived one after another. After the 5 people gathered, Zhang Ziliang threw a testing ball to each of them, saying, "Test your formation proficiency first, let's see if you've been slacking off during this time." Li Fan took the black sphere, skillfully injected a strand of spiritual consciousness into it, and began answering the questions. They were all familiar questions, and Li Fan quickly completed the test. The other 4 were still immersed in the testing ball at this time. Zhang Ziliang took back the small ball, looking satisfied, "Not bad." When the other 4 completed the test, He frowned, saying to one of them, Sun Ling, among the 5 of you, your results rank 3rd, but I still have to dismiss you. Do you know why? The cultivator named Sun Ling turned pale immediately. He opened his mouth, as if wanting to defend himself. In the end, he didn't say anything and answered with a bitter smile, Junior understands. Junior has been negligent in studying formations during this time, and my proficiency is still at the level of 3 years ago. Zhang Ziliang waved his hand, knowing is enough, you can leave. Sun Ling arched his hand, saluted, and left with a downcast expression. Seeing this, the remaining 4 people all had serious expressions. Well, don't be nervous. You're all doing fine. Zhang Ziliang smiled and said, due to special reasons, I haven't taught you for a long time. Coincidentally, the Guardian formation of Haidong Island was attacked recently, and it suffered severe damage and needs repair. You will accompany me to fix it. During this time, I can also explain the construction and repair of large-scale formations based on your performance. The other 3 nodded in agreement. Li Fan, on the other hand, had a thought and asked, Master Zhang, I remember that Haidong Island is located near the northern border of Kongyun Sea, close to the Yongliang Prefecture. How could it suddenly be attacked? Could it be the work of the 5 elders people? Zhang Ziliang nodded, it was indeed the work of a nascent soul cultivator from the 5 elders. But this matter is our fault, so we can only accept it. Li Fan wondered, why are we at fault? What happened? Zhang Ziliang looked somewhat helpless, it's because of Zhang Zhengji from the Martial Hall. He said he was chasing a scammer all the way to Yongliang Prefecture. As a result, he didn't find the person but was discovered by the 5 elders people. Zhang Zhengji and Du Xingchang, these 2 have quite impressive skills. The 2 of them teamed up and actually escaped from the encirclement in pursuit of a nascent soul and 5 or 6 golden core cultivators. Asterisk 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 asterisk. 1. I assume X in Ren means something, but I haven't been able to find anything on it besides it just being a name. Here's the raw characters, if anyone knows, Yi Xin Ren.